Oh, so proud. Very proud. Yeah, I didn't give you a paper. Mateo. They read. Mateo, no. Mateo. Oh, that's. Yeah. Thank God. Yeah. It used to be. We're not.
Yes, I have.
Oh, yes, sorry. That's okay.
I grabbed one and two and I
totally
just sit
appreciate it.
there.
Yes.
Right.
Because Carmen just called me.
Yeah.
If she stays long enough, I think she'll be a boss. You're like 80 years younger than me. So I'm getting an elbow That's true.
Buddy.
Congratulations.
So the situation these trustees represent a certain area, but they can collect. They must limit, but they can collect those from the law. Yes. Yes. Right.
There are more schools than there are districts, so I don't, or trustees, so I don't think that's right. So what's
So I got the
Oh yeah.
time for a change. I've done it for 5 years. And just for being a big supporter of most of the career, I've done a lot of this.
Than the way that being in high school.
And I'm also the most extreme night person on this staff. Yeah, I just have a very difficult time getting to see.
In the way it's all
And then I'm sure that's right.
9 years, however, town April Fool's Day 2011. Made redundant in the city. Yes.
It's always been that you see county seat and Mary's
Of Newton County, right, yes.
That's always been.
And the radio stations, because it's two now, KUVA, was originally placed in Marysville until it's been abandoned for 25 years. All the corners were named after Newton County. So at some point in the station, the city, as far as newspaper also, one of the county supervisors is state Never mind if the state of Jefferson was like an economic movement to come to Mississippi.
I don't see it.
No.
Any more than anything back when you become its own country. Where did the parliament come to us?
Various places. We're gonna do lunch tomorrow, and I'm gonna find out more about the tax. But I know that the last job was a place
I asked her if she was related to Stephanie Graf. She said no.
No. Well, a lot of the profs. Stephanie herself was time Jesus insisted on being known as Stephanie.
Oh, I didn't know.
And the attitude is, when I retire, I really want to retire.
She's disappeared.
Oh yeah. No, she's really glad to just be mom. Right now, kids are in college. I'm getting old too.
Wait, you got a long ways to go.
Yes. So anyway, we're getting back to the district. When these advocates come in calling for a move towards strictly district-based voting, is it the usual outcome that it comes to pass?
Well, but this city started a few years ago. And the majority
Yes.
and Florida were wrong.
Oh, I see.
They went to
Okay.
I've always that letter.
That's an electric. Rafferty?
No, we got it for
Oh,
don't mention that.
Yeah, yeah.
So he just
And I don't know it, but
Yeah, well, Carly talked to Leisner that we were not aware, we were not yet aware of any, not aware of any city, county, or district that had successfully fought off the challenges.
well,
Yes? Right. Yeah. It's all about the districts and not the mayor. It's still a weak mayor system. Yes. Right. I wasn't in on those interviews, but from what Carly told me, yeah. To let this election come off. Yes.
That's my reason for being
It's going to make it.
That's the biggest thing. Can't go out.
I don't think it's impossible to both do it.
Oh, yeah.
Todd, they might just be waiting.
About the cat.
But then they.
Oh, and the curving one?
So for this particular story, I'm lending Carly my support, but it is her story.
Yeah, she was at all that. I sent her a letter from Rapper to school.
Right.
She had to see.
Right.
And one of the people from this aggressive line
I'm not terribly familiar with progressive license. Do they have a tax number?
it's a relatively small group.
Okay.
Some of whom have been elected, no longer elected.
Okay. So to that, supporting Carly. I am continuing to cover the series.
Even with the new fee,
Yes.
just this week.
Just at the USD. That will be taken care of.
Yes, and what about the college?
Still paying.
Yeah,
My fee is now over 60. Closed sessions do tend to spill past some of these. Does it, at least they give you, at least they say this meeting starts with a closed session. Take an interest in how affairs applies to that. Come almost an hour after before it begins.
I Closed session, and now we have a report on closed session items.
The mic ready? You need your mic.
She's got one right here.
Student discipline. With respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Ed Code 35146 and 4891220, Government Code Section 49060 and 49078, and the Family Rights and Privacy Act, USC Section 1232, the board recommends the following regarding student discipline matters. The board recommends for the suspended expulsion of student A.
I'll second.
It's a roll call, I think, isn't it?
Roll call. Trustee Water. Aye. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank. Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends, excuse me, for the expulsion of student B.
Second.
Roll call. Trustee Water. Aye. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends, excuse me, for the expulsion of student C.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends for the expulsion of student D.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends for the expulsion of student E.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends for the expulsion of student F.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank. Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
The board recommends for the expulsion of student G.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank. Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
And lastly, the board recommends for the expulsion of student H.
Second.
Trustee Water. Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Shank. Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
We will continue on with our flag salute. We'll have Dana Page help us with our salute. Okay, announcement. This meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, second by Mrs. Water. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recognition of visitors and employee organizations. And recognition of Student of the Month. We will start with Valley Oak High School.
Good evening and happy 2020. I cannot believe we're here, but we're here, right? I'm very excited to be here tonight. We have a student from Valley Oak at the Napa campus and a student for Valley Oak at the American Canyon campus. So it's always nice to highlight both of our programs that are doing exemplary work. I wanted to introduce our first student. It's right here next to me is Jonathan Rivas. He's been with us, I always ask the teachers in terms of giving me feedback, how are students doing in the class, how are they with their peers, what are their goals, what are their plans, and so you are looking at a future barber. He's probably in the 1% of teenagers that know exactly what they want to do. And so, but I am working very, very hard of talking him into taking business classes at the community college so that he can run his own business at some point. But more important for him too is that in the classroom, he's just stellar. He is someone that is on time, ready to run, ready to work. But what's important is that not only does he really focus on what he needs to do for himself, but also is willing to, without being asked, to support his peers. In the robotics class especially, he's works closely with the teacher, and when students are having trouble, he's right there ready to help the students. In his language arts or his English class, the same thing. The teacher does not need to ask, and oftentimes, the comments that I got from a couple of the teachers is that he keeps them on their toes because he's always kind of pushing and they need to be a couple of steps ahead of him because if not, he's the one that's ahead. So I'm excited to introduce Jonathan to you. He will introduce his family that came here to join him today. And I'm going to say this in Spanish really quick so for his grandmother who's here tonight. Esta noche estamos presentando a Jonathan. Los maestros lo recomendaron por su trabajo que hace no solamente para sí mismo, sino también el apoyo que le da a sus compañeros en clase. Entonces, todo su trabajo en la clase de matemáticas, en la clase de inglés, bueno, en todas sus clases. Pero más importante es, los maestros me dicen que siempre tienen que estar 1 o 2 pasos enfrente de él, porque si no, él los va a atropellar y va a decir, necesito un poquito más. Así es de que es un placer de presentar a Jonathan como el estudiante del mes de noviembre. So it's a pleasure to introduce Jonathan for the month of November. He's a little nervous, so.
All right, good evening. My name is Jonathan Rivas,
And I will start by saying thank you to my family for coming today. And I really want to give thanks to my mom for all the support throughout all the years. And I am thankful for the board and the Napa Valley Education Foundation. And I have attended Napa High School before transferring to Valley Oak. And I am thankful for being a part of Valley Oak. I am thankful for and having the opportunity to graduate early. Let's see. And my plans after high school are starting my internship for barbering. And some of the experiences at Valley Oak High School is the teachers. Whenever I get stuck on something, they'll be there to help most of the time, well, all the time. And thank you for listening.
Our next student, because I don't get to work directly with the students as often as I would like at American Canyon, I have Joanne Clark, the classroom teacher, presenting our student.
Good evening, everybody. I have Sam Hernandez with me tonight. I want to tell you some fun facts about Sam. Sam has a 1.17 GPA. He rarely attends school. In the last semester, he has 56 behavior referrals in one semester for defiance, disrespect, and non-compliance. He's completed 100 out of 160 credits needed for graduation, and he's on track to drop out. So, wait, that was last year. That was last year. Let's talk about Sam this year. So this year, it's about transformation. Sam attended summer school with me for 2.5 weeks, and he made up 10 credits that he missed. He has had a 4.0 GPA since day one of school. He has straight A's these last 2 trimesters. And not only that, this kid has a 99.9% attendance rate. Like, I can't get this guy to be absent. He is the first one through the door in the morning, and he even came in over winter break to help us set up our new space, so he started back a week early, and he has no behavior referrals, so he's transformation. Sam is also a leader. He's been nominated by his peers to serve on our class leadership team for the last 2 trimesters, and he is a very trusted and respected voice in our classroom. He cares about creating a learning environment where everyone feels supported and listened to. And he does this by really communicating with me on a daily basis about thoughtful agenda items and the flow of the class. He's a natural teacher, and he is going to be a teacher. You are. He is going to be a teacher. He is also dependable. He shows up every day, and he not only shows up to help his peers and help me, he's showing up for himself. And so he's on track to graduate early. He's a junior, by the way, and he only needs like 54 more credits. He'll be out of here in a second. And so here are a few more comments from his classmates. We have about 10 students of our 20 kids here to support him tonight who just show yeah. So here's what they have to say. I did a little survey. All right. So Sam motivates me to do better. He is always there for me and puts a smile on my face. Sam is respectful. That's his little brother. I know, so sweet. Sam is respectful, kind, and caring. He's always helping others. Sam is hardworking, and every day I see him, he completes his assignments and then starts helping others, or Miss Clark. Sam always works hard and never gives up. His view about school has entirely changed. So that's what we all have to say about Sam, but he loves to talk about himself, so here we go.
I don't think I can top that, but I'm just gonna try. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Hernandez, and I would like to thank the board and the Napa Valley Education Foundation for selecting me to be December Student of the Month. I would also like to thank Ms. Clark for making me do my work and forcing me to actually try in school, and always taking the time to help me, unlike my previous teachers. I would also like to thank my classmates for being there for me and struggling with me and helping me through my problems. Before I went to Valley Oak, I didn't turn in my homework. I was always in trouble, and I didn't go to class. I wasn't thinking about what I wanted to do after high school, and then when my grades came in the mail, there were always D's and F's. My mom was always mad, but me personally, I didn't care. Now that I'm in Valley Oak, I changed that around. I care about my work. I care about if I'm on time. I care about if I turn in my assignments on time or not. I changed my perspective on school because of Valley Oak. I now have all A's, and I am on track to graduate early if I try hard enough. I got together with the help from Ms. Clark and my classmates. I'm really thankful not only for the board and the Napa Valley Education Foundation, but for Valley Oak and the second chance they gave me to succeed. Thank you. That was my speech.
New Tech High School.
Good evening. Thank you so much for taking this time to recognize our students. I'm so excited to be here tonight and proud to introduce you to two of our seniors. I've had a real privilege of watching both of these young women come in as freshmen, uncertain, and really just grow into exceptional leaders and advocates on our campus. Both of these young women have fully engaged in the really rich experience that we offer at New Tech. They've participated in so many co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and they've both earned straight A's during their time in high school. So for the month of November, I'd like to introduce you to Annika Lindroos. I'm really proud to have watched Annika just be someone who's been involved in leading change on our campus during the entire time that she's been with us. She was involved in starting our peer support program when she was in the 10th grade, and she still continues to work with that program to support her peers. She was also involved when we participated in Stanford's Challenge for Success, which looks at redefining what success looks like. And her team really focused in on helping alleviate stress and anxiety for kids and finding little things that they can do to make big, impactful change for their peers. So I'm very excited to introduce you to her.
Hi, good evening. I'm Annika Lindroos. For the first 10 years of my educational life, I attended Stonebridge School. Now I am a senior at New Tech High. These two school experiences mashed together to create the perfect school scenario for me. Stonebridge, the source of my early education, taught me skills that most people couldn't learn in conventional schools. Thanks to this education, I can write in cursive unlike most of my peers. I can also draw, garden, and cook, and have many other unique skills, thanks to my time at Waldorf. I can also tie my independence and creativity back to those 10 years. For the past 3.5 years at New Tech, I have learned other necessary skills. I learned digital design in addition to learning the complexities of becoming a reliable team member. I learned how to take charge of my learning in a way that is needed in the real world. New Tech has taught me how to speak up for myself and how to effectively communicate my aspirations and opinions. Thanks to my time at New Tech, I have undergone many unique experiences. These diverse experiences have caused me to expand my comfort zone and thus enhance my outlook on life. Throughout both of these schools, I have formed an amazing community of both adults and peers, friends that I can rely on to have my back. I have even made a few of those lifelong friends who I just know are going to be in my life forever. Had I went to another school, I would have never encountered these amazing people that I've gotten to meet. I'm not sure where I'm going with my life after graduation, But I know that wherever I go, New Tech and Stonebridge have both set me up for success in whatever my next adventure will be. Thank you.
Our student of the month for December is Evangeline Anguiano. I've also loved watching her move through New Tech. She's a student that came in with a very strong voice and presence already, and that's just grown tremendously through her time with us. She's been a very big participant in our mock trial program and in our speech and debate program. And while at New Tech, got to represent us during the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals Civics Challenge, where she presented on how the 14th Amendment impacts education, which is very appropriate. So I'm also very excited to introduce you to her.
Good evening. My name is Evangeline Anguiano. I'm a senior at New Tech, and next year I will be attending the University of Oregon as a history major. Since second grade, my education has been my driving ambition, and it's all because of my teacher, Mr. Larson. When I started in his class, I was really behind, and he thought I was going to have to be held back for the year. However, he didn't let that happen. He pushed me to be the best student I could ever imagine that I could be. By the end of the year, I was advanced in all of my subjects, and he presented me with his Student of the Month award. It is still one of my proudest accomplishments. Really, it is, and this is an honor too, but to see your education grow like that is truly incredible. Next semester, actually no, tomorrow I will be starting at Bel Air Park as an elementary school. I will be TAing for my internship at New Tech. I will be working with second graders, and I specifically asked for them because of what an impactful year that was for me. My second grade teacher taught me how fun and rewarding an education could be, and because of him, I am so excited for what the future has in store for me. And I am so grateful to him and to New Tech and to the NVUSD for every unexpected opportunity for growth that I've been given. Thank you.
Can I get all the students of the month, please? Can I get all the student of the month, please? Here on, yes, and the baby. To come up front here.
Here, your little brother.
We'll have a picture taken.
Since he doesn't want to let go of him.
Oh, he's so cute. No. Public comments on non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any issue raised during this section of this agenda, and as much as board action is limited to posted agenda items, speakers are requested to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Adrienne Boudreau.
Good evening, board and superintendent. It's been a little while since I've been here. It's very nice to see you all again. Obviously, the October meeting was pretty tough for a lot of reasons, and don't want to be sour grapes, but there was one thing that was said that just really kind of stuck with me that I would like to respond to from Mr. Shunk. That said, there seems to be little interest in IB other than avoiding other schools, or at least the children at other schools. And I just hope you realize that a significant number of Mount George parents did choose to continue the IB program at Bel Air. And there was also a contingent of parents that were trying to work with Phillips to see if we could get IBs transferred there too during the whole process. So that really wasn't true. I thought it was kind of derogatory to say that about Mount George parents, and just kind of unfair. So moving on, we just learned that Stonebridge will be taking over the Mount George campus, hopefully. I actually am really happy about that. It will be nice to see another school that go there. It will be nice that the $1 million that went to the septic in the field were not going to waste. It will be nice for those students to have a safe place to be. So I think that was a really nice decision, and all said and done, I think that was awesome. A couple things that I've just kind of noticed. I don't know if it's just inconsistencies between goals and actions, or just things that have kind of popped up when I've been watching meetings and reading agenda items and stuff. Certain things like that there's going to be some time dedicated to rebranding the school district. And while that's amazing, because yes, we do need to bring more students into the district, I find it kind of surprising that there's been kind of a collective shrug about students that are in the district that we lost due to school closures, or that might not choose to enter the public school system because of that, or neglecting to continue offering certain programming that might draw more students and compete more with private schools in the area. That large amounts of bond money were spent to rebuild an earthquake-sensitive school, when by the board's own admission, that school is pretty chronically underpopulated. Stressing, the first interim report that came out, that looks just as bad as last year's, despite the closures and all that information. Things like praising the special programs at one school that led to state recognition and scrapping another one. And so it's just those kind of things that I don't quite understand altogether, what the overarching goal is when those seem to be kind of at odds with what you're trying to accomplish. But that's really all I had for right now. Thank you.
Lisa Schwang for NGSS. Schwang. Thank you.
And it's actually kind of a quick question, and thank you all for actually allowing me to have the opportunity to ask it. I spent quite a lot of time last year working on doing a STEAM project for our elementary school. One of the things that I ran into was the fact that the district does not have the next generation science standards implemented. And I'm curious to know, when is the district as a whole going to address the idea of meeting those state standards for the next generation science standards? Thank you.
Jennabelle?
Good evening. Hello?
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Janabel Mantap. Excuse me. First and foremost, I would like to just say thank you to all of you for all the hard work that you do and shaping the future leaders of tomorrow. As we can see with the presentation we just had with the Student of the Month, that's so rewarding to see, so thank you all. I am here before you today to introduce myself as a parent of my 5-year-old boy and girl twins, as well as my 3-year-old daughter. I am new to the district, and my husband, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, and I both work here in Napa and are currently considering moving to Napa. Thus, as parents, we wish to be involved in the educational journey of our kids, and therefore, I just simply wanted to introduce myself and get to know the board a little bit. We hope to get involved in the school that we choose for our kids, as the twins will be starting kindergarten this upcoming school year. At the moment, we find ourselves a little nervous and concerned with some of the decisions we made. We recently applied to the 2 bilingual language schools here in Napa. We got accepted to NVLA, and the concern we have are with some of the information that has recently come to our attention regarding NVLA's financial debt. And I don't know if those are rumors or wrong information, but I just wanted to kind of sit in and find out about that, because if this is a school we choose to send, just wanted to know how that might impact the school, our kids, the education. I mean, we hear about schools closing, so just wanted to get to know a little bit more about that and see if there's anything as parents that we can do before or even during the school time. So thank you so much for my time, and again, good evening.
Thank you. Welcome to Napa. And those are the last 3 cards I have. I do have an additional 2 for items I3A, and we will be calling those shortly. Reports, Board of Education and Student Board Representatives, reports.
Hello, good evening, and Happy New Year to all. I missed you guys. So, there's not much going on, just the high schools are wrapping up their winter sports with big games this week, and I've had the opportunity to see how River Middle School has been like putting a smile on a lot of kids' faces, and it makes me happy. It's a beautiful school, a beautiful campus. And also this past Tuesday on January 14, Valley Oak received a wave of new students, and we have a little over 200 students combined with the program directed in American Canyon also. And we were led with a school-wide activity where we discussed how Valley Oak was unique and helped individuals grow. And that's it for my report.
On the 17th of December, I had a visit at Alta Heights. Got to observe the delivery of our new Measure H Chromebooks to the classroom. The kids were really thrilled to get the new computers, and one was even doing some excited fist pumping due to the delivery. Also got to experience the excitement of recess, where I supervised a sometimes contentious kickball game. Otherwise, it was a very interesting visit. And then on the 20th, I attended the district staff luncheon to bring a close to the 2019 calendar year. Set with some dedicated folks who weren't able to stay for the entire luncheon, as they felt there was still work to be done before the day's end. Then on the 14th of this month, I had a nice visit at American Canyon Middle School. I had a tour of their campus and learned some interesting things about the history of the campus and how it grew in stages over time.
Acela and I had a 2x2 with the City of American Canyon, which we'll cover at the end. And I had a chance, while I was working on some things at home, to listen to Dr. Musetti on the KBON program about a week ago.
It all works, and
I also attended the holiday celebration for the Ed Center, and it was full of highly appreciated workers celebrating the end of the semester. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I live right down the street from our newest campus, and didn't quite experience the chaos that our neighborhood was expecting, but it was exciting, and it's great to hear the voices of the children, the students at the school. So good work, Mike. Good work.
Well, on December 16th, I went to the American Canyon High School Christmas Choir, and anyone who has not been has missed out on a great event. I went to the Hispanic Network Christmas event where I learned that our board president is an amazing singer. She has an incredible voice. She's quite, she has star quality. Also went to the Ed Center lunch, the meeting with officials from City of Napa. And I went to an interesting meeting I was invited as a board member to attend a water resource meeting up in Calistoga. And what are you laughing at? Water's important, haven't you noticed? And sometimes we don't have enough of it. Anyway, it was there were people from all over the Bay Area, and lots of our friends work in various sections of local government, and it was interesting. I learned a lot. So, and next week my school visits resume.
I just remembered, it wasn't particularly, you're always wear your NVUSD trustee hat. There's been just a series of consecutive trainings and opportunities to keep learning about the census. The first letters to go out to families in terms of how to participate in the census is coming the first week of March. So throughout our county, the allocation of funds directly impacts everything that we're trying to do here today. For every individual that doesn't get counted, it impacts funds for health and education. And the most undercounted individuals in our community are our children, in particular 0 to 5. So we have a great opportunity here in our school district to be involved in that process and engage with our community partners in that effort. So right now, there's a lot of, the buzz of that is going to start going, but I think one thing that has struck me the most is that, yes, it's a federal process, but also the data that comes out of that, it's very local as well. So if we are undercounted in our own Napa County, then we're not going to have this also the correct allocation of funds for our students and the families. So it's a critical opportunity for all of us to get absolutely involved, because there is a serious set of barriers that are presented in front of our families in terms of fear due to political climate or whatnot. And it impacts all of us. So if an individual doesn't get counted, it's going to impact us directly as well as just being community members. So I just wanted to just share that. And also I know more how to get involved with that. If you want to know, let me know.
Also, I did want to say I participated in the staff NVUSD Christmas party. We had a spinning Christmas tree. That was fabulous. I don't know who did that, but part of the decorating committee. That was kind of fun. I wanted...
Apparently you need to sing at the one in 2021.
A Napa County Hispanic Network Scholarship has just opened this week. I can forward the information to our superintendent. And then I will be participating in the first 5-second cohort. Miss Elba Gonzalez Mares serves as part of the first. She put my name in the pot, and then I interviewed, and they picked me, and a lot of other fabulous people that are here in Napa that will be collaborating in this wonderful leadership training. And then another little shout out, and I want to do this really loud because the 2 roundabouts that opened really slowed down the traffic for Snow Elementary Harvest. And it made a ton of difference. I can get out of my driveway, I'm on time to go to work. And secondly, we don't have pedestrians that are crossing the street with the high rate of traffic that was coming through. So that is just fabulous that that's happened. And so we're also glad that no one has gotten into an accident through those roundabouts, because those are kind of dizzy. So anyhow, with your permission, my board, with part of my report, I want to bring John Tudor to give a presentation with the Assessor's Records Recorder and County Clerk of Napa to give us an informational item. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. I'm here with my Registrar of Voters hat on to give you a little background on how important the census is, as mentioned by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares. We will be redistricting the county supervisor districts, as will the Independent Citizens Commission at the state level be redistricting all of the House of Representatives, all of the Assembly seats, and all of the Senate seats in March to March to August of 2021. And the reason I'm here tonight is because the Unified School District is unique in the county in that you are the only district in the county which has a requirement that trustees live in a certain geographic area, but then run at large. And I'm not here to comment on whether that's a good or a bad system. I just want to tell you what the options are should you consider changing that. Even though I've been around since dirt, I'm not sure I understand exactly how those original districts were drawn after the district was unified back in the late 50s and early 60s. I wasn't on the Board of Supervisors then, but getting there already. So what I just wanted to point out to you is that should you switch to trustee area elections, which are done by the college and by the Board of Education that reports to works with Barbara Nemko, you would need to create trustee areas which are equal in population and meet certain other requirements. They do not do that now because the geographic boundaries are just ones you have to live in, and you run at large, so every voter gets a chance to vote for you. If, however, you were to run at the trustee level, again, not something I'm recommending for or against, you need to make sure that the correct amount of people are in your trustee area. And once you create that every 10 years, just like the Board of Supervisors, the governing board of the college, and the County Board of Education, you would need to redistrict those districts on a 10-year basis. Now, there are one issue for you to consider if you decide to move in that direction is timing. Your next election for some of your board is in November of 2020. The census data, as I mentioned, doesn't come out until March of 2021, and that is the legally required data that would be used if you wanted to switch to trustee areas for 2022. So number one, and I'm not recommending one way or the other, but if the board decides, from my perspective, and I've just been asked by the Board of Supervisors to conduct for the third decade the redistricting for the board, and I will probably conduct the redistricting for the college board and for the County Board of Education, which I've done the last 2 decades before this. I would be in a position to have, if you move in that direction, to be available for you as a resource and to conduct the redistricting for you. And that would work in conjunction with all of the other entities using exactly the same census-grounded information. A couple of things about that: it would be more efficient, probably be less expensive. The whole process we're estimating will cost about $80,000 for the county and the 2 existing boards. It will go up a little bit if you were to decide to go in trustee area elections, because this is a first time, a little more expensive. I probably will be charging the college and the Board of Education, with their consent of course, $10,000 each. My estimate that if the school district, the NVUSD, joined in that effort, the cost would be closer to $25,000, which is still not a lot of money, because we have to start over with brand-new trustee areas based on the requirements of the federal and state laws governing redistricting. So I just wanted to let you know that. By the way, I will not be available. As you know, I have some duties between March and November of this year, conducting the presidential primary and the presidential general election. So if the board decided to move in that direction and to move on an accelerated basis, my staff and the county staff would not be available to be the redistricting agent for you. We will, of course, be available in the off year of 2021, but we would not be available this year. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then or if there are any comments, I'd be happy to respond to those.
I have a question.
Yes.
How does that work for people? So we're going to have an election in 2020. People are going to be elected. Would we potentially, when we're drawing these lines, move freshly elected folks out of their district that they're in?
You could. My guess is it wouldn't really matter because the districts would take effect in the next 2 election cycles. So it would impact the person elected in 2020 and 2024, not in 22. In 2022 and then 2020. It would, because not all of you are up in 2022. If you went to district trustee area elections, my guess is it would not change that you're a rotating board with 4 up in one session and 3 up in the other. So it's a great question. My guess is that no, I don't think it, because you only have to live in the district to run. You don't have to live in the district to serve because you would have been elected at large in 2020. It would impact you in 2024. So if the district in which you lived, you might have somebody else in it with you in 2024, but that would be the worst that would happen. I'm not an election attorney, but my guess is from just having done this for 20 plus years and having been around, as I said, forever, my guess is you would not be impacted if the district shifted out in 2022 from where you lived in 2020 until 2024.
Any other questions?
Mr. Tudor, is there pressure to move from at-large elections to district elections? Are we seeing, is there a movement at this point?
Well, this goes back quite a few years. The most current one I know of goes back probably 6 or 7 years, which was the Madera Unified School District, where there was a legal action taken to require trustee area elections in that school district. They shifted to trustee area elections. The basis for that is the question about whether at-large elections do not give certain electoral groups enough power to make a change. If you have trustee area elections, you shouldn't draw them necessarily to favor one group or another, just like you shouldn't draw them to favor one party or another. But the thought was, if it turned out that a geographic area had a larger percentage of a minority, either ethnic or language or whatever, that trustee area might have a higher rate of success at getting elected. I have not looked at the statistics. That would be something that I know this board, because you're thoughtful and careful, and with your superintendent, you would look at what had happened in those districts that have shifted to trustee area elections to see if it's made an impact. But that is the issue that's been going on. It's been primarily generated by attempting to make, and of course you have a very diverse board, as we can see, so that isn't a direct issue here, but in parts of the state there are very undiverse boards in very diverse districts. And I think that was part of what caused the issue to rise.
Well, as you know, most of the races here are uncontested. You had a race. Yeah, you had, several people.
At 4.
Yeah. And, but that's unusual. And I don't know why, because it's a really desirable position and pays very well too. But, yeah, I've always felt that this was the most restrictive way of this, what we've got, because you're limited in who can run. You know, it has to be someone from a particular neighborhood. And yet, everyone in town, if there is a contested race, gets to vote, has to vote for you, meaning you're going to need a lot of name recognition or a lot of money to run for a job that pays $400 a month. And I was served on another elected board in this community, and I was thinking that there is no power on earth that could prevent that group from having everybody there from the same neighborhood, from the same block.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this board, from historic purposes, has made it clear that you're going to have representation geographically.
Right.
That had nothing to do, especially when it was created many years ago, about diverse representation. You are correct that a trustee area based is a smaller number of people voting for that person. That person still would have to live in the area.
Right.
But the fact that someone has to live in a geographic area doesn't stop a lot of people in that neighborhood from running for this board if they wanted, even though they would run at large. So I'm not sure that creating trustee areas would have an impact on the number of candidates who might run. I think you're absolutely right, Ms. Waters, that it would have an impact on the cost and the size of the election campaign when you're focused just in that neighborhood.
I do think it is important to just reiterate the point that one of the reasons the advocacy groups have been behind this is because of the lack of diversity in representation on school boards across the state of California, despite California's diverse demographic. And I think it is important to note that we have not, with the current governance team to my left, we have representation of our largest language and ethnic minority group, which is our Latino population, and they are well represented on this school board.
I had a just curiosity question. You mentioned that at the supervisor level and assembly and senate and congressional, and anything with the municipalities, is that with the cities are also?
There is some effort. There's new legislation, and if you're not aware, the same gentleman who wrote you a letter, a more, what's the word I want to use, a more demanding letter to the city of Napa asking them to look at district elections. They are currently at large with no geographic requirement, as Ms. Water mentioned, to live anywhere in the city. You could all live in downtown Napa, and all the candidates, but they are looking at that. They have 45 days from the day they receive this petition to respond. I've been in touch with them just about the same timing and cost issues that I talked to you about, but they have some very clear deadlines to meet, whereas this board has as much time as it wants, especially if you decide to move in that direction. If you shoot for 2022, you wouldn't need to make that decision until late this year or early next year. I would need to know that you would be participating in the redistricting no later than probably January 31st of 2021, so that we could bring you aboard as we do the beginning of the design for the underlying data gathering and manipulation that would be used for redistricting.
Just for some historical context, in the 80s, there was a single Latino school board member. Starting in probably the decade of the 90s, we had, I forgot the chart that you put together for me, Vera. We started, there was a period where there was no diversity, ethnic diversity on the board, and then Ray Martinez served as a school board member. Followed a few years later, quite a few years later, by Tala de Winter in the 80s. Ray Martinez sometime in the 90s. And then in the early 2000s, Chavez, Francis Ortiz Chavez, started to serve, and then I was elected in 2004. And since then, we've had about, the diversity on the board has stayed pretty steadily at 2 or more. So the need, I think that the community has obviously seen the value of a diverse school board. And even though we don't have many people running for those positions, it could be that the quality of the people who do run far outstrips the value, the quality of the people who might consider. So we have, as a community, taken care of the concern about underrepresentation, and we've ourselves. So I appreciated the conversation we had a couple months ago.
Which is why I'm here
Yes,
tonight. I appreciate your having raised it.
So, like I say, the community seems to have taken this in hand, but it's important. And just as another historical note, when Fairfield Unified School District went to districts, the districts they wanted to protect, the ones that were underrepresented, the fees for filing for elections were so high that no one in that district could afford to pay the fees. So
They're high here.
well, clearly, and I ran into them at a school board conference. Representatives from.
I'm a little confused about that because I handle the filing for you and all the other school districts, and there are no filing fees.
Oh, not the filing fees. I'm sorry, I always get those mixed up. The statement fees.
Oh, the candidate
Yeah.
statement
Yeah.
fees,
Yeah.
yes. Those I'm also in charge of, and those are based on the cost to produce it. It's not.
Right.
That's why, now, there is a way for a candidate who cannot afford to pay the statement to qualify for that. We've not had one in Napa County, but there's a very clear code section and a process where someone who wants to run for the school board can get a candidate statement published without having to make the payment. They have to go through a process with at the school level with my office to make sure they meet the financial requirements. They can do that. And then there's also a second way to pay over time, which the legislature recognized that several years ago, just so you know.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Pass that along to my friends.
That's great, because I had never heard that, so.
All right.
I really needed that information before I dipped into my 401k.
Well, I must say the financial limits are very low. So it's not an easy test to make, but it is there for just that reason. Thank you very much.
Superintendent and executive staff reports.
So good evening, everyone. Happy 2020. Happy start to a new calendar year, the latter half of the 1920 school year, and a new decade here in the Napa Valley Unified School District. Just a few announcements tonight. Over the course of this last week, a week before winter break, I had the opportunity to visit 2 of our middle schools. I was at Silverado Middle School before the winter break, and I want to thank Principal Jen Cole for an extraordinary walkthrough through many of her math classrooms. And I was really excited to be there. The Promethean boards had just arrived, and it was great to see several of the teachers there integrating technology into their teaching so quickly after the Promethean board deployment, seeing a high degree of implementation. The teachers clearly were using it as a tool that made things the learning more visible for our students, and so that was really, really exciting to see. And I wanted to thank her for sharing with me her plan for several of the instructional improvements Silverado's focused on in mathematics. On Monday, I was also able to visit River at their first day, and so I also want to thank Mike Pearson and the school planning and construction team for a very organized opening of school that Monday. It is a really, really really just a huge, extraordinary lift and project to get a school built, to have staff move in, and to navigate all of that change and hold it with such care, and then have the first morning be a smooth operation. And so I really want to thank Assistant Superintendent Mike Pearson and his team for extraordinary leadership and organization there on Monday. The staff and the students all were very, very happy. I also want to let everybody know that in the December board meeting, we did take action to establish board advisory committees, and the calendar for those advisory committees has been established. So I wanted to take this as an opportunity, public record, to let the community know that if you go to our district website under Board of Education, you can see the assigned trustees to each of the 4 committees that we established, along with the meeting dates for this current academic year. So we look forward to launching those advisory committees in a couple weeks next month. I also wanted to announce that we are very committed to a request that came to us earlier in the year. It was a tremendous loss for our community. One of our leaders here in the school district passed away, Mr. Don Evans, and there was a request to consider naming a facility here, given the extensive work that he did around facilities in the Napa Valley Unified School District. And so I wanted to come back around to the community and the public and let everyone know that in accordance with Board Policy 7310, Assistant Superintendent Mike Pearson will be leading a small citizens advisory committee around the naming procedure, and we will be bringing that back potentially for consideration to the school board at an upcoming meeting in the very near future before the end of this school year. I also wanted to take a moment to thank the Napa Valley Community Foundation. The Napa Valley Community Foundation has been very supportive of some district programs, and I wanted to announce that we were the recipients of a small grant, but I do want to recognize their commitment to the AVID program, their repeated commitment to the AVID program, and so that they have granted us with a $2,500 grant from Penelope and Ronald, the Penelope and Ronald Mallon Fund, a donor-advised fund of Napa Valley Community Foundation, and it is intentionally for support of AVID advancement via individual determination program. And so we wanted to honor them and thank them for their ongoing and continuous support. And then I also wanted to let everybody know that we did announce that Puebla Vista has been recognized as a California Distinguished School, and we heard from the State Superintendent of Instruction, Tony Thurman. The California Department of Education will be hosting the recognition ceremony for all California Distinguished Schools next month in February at the happiest, is that what it is? The happiest place on earth? Yep. Isn't that what Disneyland is? Or is it the most magical? It's both. Magical, happiest. Oh yeah, Julie Presley should be able to tell me. She's a Disneyland aficionado. So we will be going down there with Puebla Vista staff, Principal Helen Roca, to celebrate that recognition, which is an honorary distinction that they have received, and they're doing the hard work of teaching in Spanish and English, so they're implementing all of those content standards and simultaneously making sure that the students of that school leave the elementary bilingual and biliterate in Spanish and English. So with that, that concludes my report for tonight, and I am going to toss to the assistant superintendents.
Good evening. Tonight I'd like to acknowledge and recognize our partners on the move, who together with NVUSD provide staffed family resource centers at Phillips, Shearer, and McPherson Elementary Schools. And I want to particularly acknowledge On the Move's support of our families during the recent public safety power shutoffs. On the Move provided direct support to NVUSD families, distributing $44,975 of gift cards for food provided to 346 low-income families. A total of $98,000 over $98,000 was distributed to 785 households that house 1,504 children in the city of Napa, of which 652 were NVUSD families. Thank you. Additionally, of that $98,000 that were distributed, $12,000 was dedicated into the city of American Canyon. Thank you to On the Move for your partnership and support of our families. That concludes my report.
That's good.
Aldea and Puertas Abiertas and Aldea were also partners in providing all of that support for families together with On the Move.
Thank you. Last Thursday, I attended a day of learning sessions at the California Teacher Residency Lab Conference, along with Director Pat Andre Jennings from Instruction and a teacher on special assignment, Carrie Stroll, who are right now shepherding our own aspiring teacher residency program, currently with 6 students, some at Pueblo Vista and some at Harvest. This work is grant funded, and it's in line with our efforts to establish a talented and diverse workforce under Goal 2 of our strategic plan. So I want to talk about what is a residency program. This is, residency programs are starting to gain some momentum in California. They are a way to help the state not only deal with the shortage of teachers in hard to fill areas, but also offer a new model of learning for teachers and a new model that really truly prepares teachers for the very challenging work that's ahead of them after they get their credentials. So a residency is an opportunity to complete pre-service work, otherwise known as student teaching, in a placement with a master teacher for an entire school year. Students complete their credential program, coursework, in our case with Sonoma State University, and concurrently work side by side with a very experienced and successful master teacher for the entire school year. They benefit from seeing the whole year from the first day to the last day of school, witnessing the growth of students and assisting in that work to make that progress happen. And our students benefit from having an enthusiastic and talented young teacher in training or restarting teacher in training available all year to give extra help to them. So this is this work throughout the state and even actually throughout the country is mostly grant and philanthropically funded. The residents receive a stipend which just about covers the cost of their credential program. We know that teachers who have the right knowledge and skills and disposition to make that they can make the biggest difference to our student achievement. And maybe someday we will fully fund and support aspiring teachers in training, but this is a step in the right direction. So we're really proud to be supporting this work here in Napa Valley Unified.
Good evening. For tonight's report, I will focus on data regarding the open enrollment outcomes for families impacted by the closures of Mount George and Yountville, along with a brief statement about what I learned at the School Services Governor's Budget Workshop that I attended today. So the data is hot off the press. And the NVUSD enrollment team has worked very proactively to ensure that all families impacted by school closure were placed at this school of their choice as much as possible. I'd like to thank the enrollment team for this incredible work. They did some really, really incredible work where they reached out to each and every family, even when the data was really unclear. For example, of the 179 students attending Mount George in grades kindergarten through 4th grade, 100% will be based on parent first or second choice. The student offer data is as of follows. This is as of Monday. The data will change as people accept their offer. So 72 students chose Alta Heights. 15 students returned to resident schools. 78 were offered first choice via open enrollment. 14 were offered second choice via open enrollment. All requests for IB were met. Now, it did take a little work for this to happen. Some of the families were a little bit unclear about their choice. When we had sent them out the form, there was a discrepancy between what was listed on the form and what they put down in open enrollment, and so that did take some subsequent calls earlier this week. For Yountville, of the 97 students attending Yountville in grades kindergarten through 4th grade, 96% will be offered placement based on parent guardian first or second choice. The student placement data is as follows, and again, this was as of Monday. 69 students placed at Willow, 20 students returned to resident schools, 4 offered first choice in open enrollment, 0 students were offered second choice. The remaining 4 families will receive a phone call and be offered space at Willow or offered a spot at a school with a space. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. There were about a dozen families or so where they put one choice on the survey that we sent and a different choice for the open enrollment form, or they weren't ready to make a decision. So there were a number of families, less than a half a dozen, where they didn't provide us with any data. We reached out to them on the phone, and they weren't quite ready to make a decision. Now that the open enrollment window is over, they're ready to make a decision, and we're trying to work with them as much as possible to place them where they'd like to be placed. In terms of savings due to school closure, during the 7-11 process, we spoke a great deal about savings due to school closure. We're on track to save more than we anticipated. For example, our model did not include savings due to placing students more efficiently and needing less teachers. There are currently a total of 15 teachers at Mount George and Yountville. As of today, we anticipate that this number will be reduced to 10 to 15 teachers, or a savings of about 4 to 5 FTE. Again, the teacher FEA, these are just estimates at this point. It will definitely change as families take their final choice. But right now it's estimated to be an increase of FTE due to, again, parent choice of 3 at Alta Heights, 4 at Willow, 2 at Bel Air, and 1 at Vichy, or a total of 5 FTE. And again, this is with providing families with what they want requested via either the Google Form survey that we had sent out to them or their open enrollment choice. In terms of the governor's budget, I attended the workshop today where they provided an initial analysis of the governor's proposed budget that was released last week. But before I provide a very quick analysis, I'd like to thank union leadership from NBA, CSEA, and NAPS for attending the workshop with me. It was a very nice experience to attend with them and have nice collaborative discussions about the impacts for our school district. To summarize some of the big data that we learned there, is that population in California is at a 100-year low in terms of growth, and so again, we do anticipate to continue to have declining enrollment in our future with the decreased population in California. Anticipated expenditure increases due to pensions and other costs will be greater than increased revenue. Much of the one-time money that we received this year is not in the proposed budget. For example, there is not any one-time money to offset the increased costs for STRS and PERS. Also, the $2 million received last year for preschool special education students will be cut to about $1 million, or about 50%. On the positive side, there will be some additional money for special education that will go through the SELPA. Not all SELPAs will receive the same percentage, and so it's very unclear in terms of what we will receive and then what other school districts will receive. The money will fall something where SELPAs that are what they consider overfunded won't receive any money. SELPAs that are underfunded will receive additional percentages. So there's more information to come around that. Thank you very much.
Which category do we fall into?
They have not provided that criteria yet. It was a very broad statement. I mean, generally with the governor's budget, they release information. Some of it's very clear, like one-time money. Other parts are very opaque, and it takes time to work it through. They literally added a slide right before they presented. It's not even in the written copy. So there's work to be done. And remember, this is just the governor's proposal. There'll definitely be some changes between now and when he adopts the actual budget.
Mike Pearson, Assistant Superintendent, Operational Services. Good evening, President Martine, NVUSD Board of Education trustees, Dr. Mercedes, and community members. Happy New Year to everyone. I certainly hope that you all will see clearly in the year 2020. Thank you for the opportunity to provide each of you with an updated operational services. I do with most of my reports. My focus will be on the strategic plan, goal 4, tactical, proactive, and efficient asset management. Under maintenance and operations, winter break affords us an opportunity to complete a number of work orders, and we like it when students and staff are not around because we can get into classrooms and take care of a lot of things. Over the break, we also participated in an energy treasure hunt, which was an audit led by a company called Clear Results. NVUSD is doing a pretty good job with energy conservation. We've already started to implement ideas that we found on the audit, so that's good that we're doing that already. And in February, we have an energy management assessment also happening through Clear Results, where they will assess how well energy management is being integrated into NVUSD, and then how do we make decisions around these energy management situations, as well as integrating it into our system. We're going to bring these suggestions also to our Climate Stabilization Committee, which is starting in February. And Dr. Musetti and myself met with Isabel Martin, who is a senior at New Tech High School, and we have our agenda already drafted for this first meeting, so we're looking forward to that. Transportation, staff continues to safely transport all of our students that ride buses, and they're also planning for the summer school. Food service continues to provide, the staff continues to provide extremely nutritious meals. As is mentioned, River School did open up, and surprisingly, almost all the students want to eat in the cafeteria. Brandy Dribelbis is incredibly happy that more kids are eating meals in the new multi-purpose room. Facilities, I've been continuing to meet with principals around the room utilization just to find out how the rooms are being utilized for future planning. We are already starting to think about graduation in June, and then summer school and outside user usage is also on our radar screen. And then finally, under the Measure H bond program, as was mentioned, River School did open to rave reviews. I appreciate all the compliments that people have shared tonight, but we would not have been nearly successful without the amazing staff I have that works tirelessly, and many of them work tirelessly over the 3 weeks to get the school ready so that we can open up on January 13th. We do plan a ribbon cutting sometime in February of 2020. Our projects underway are the following. We are finishing up the kitchens at Shearer and McPherson. Groundbreaking occurred for the finishing kitchens at Vichy and Browns Valley. Division of State Architects approved our security fences, so we'll be bidding shortly at Shearer, McPherson, and Donaldson Way, and those fences will start to go up. Our roofing projects are in the design process, and this landscaping at Snow continues to happen. Weather is causing us some issues with putting in the nice 2-acre field that we're looking forward to having for the students to play on. And then finally, we wanted to give you a little presentation, a little update on Napa Junction. Pictures do speak a lot here, so bear with me for a moment. Okay. So, as you recall, in November of 2019, this is what the site looked like. And to orient you, this is eucalyptus, and this is what's called wetlands edge. And this will show you that the foundations were being dug and then built. This is another aerial view of what was happening there. And now, 2 months later, you're starting to see buildings start to come up, walls start to go up here. So this is, and you can help me out here, Cal, this is the administration building here. Yes. That you'll see coming up. Again, this is eucalyptus, and this is wetlands edge. This is the giant moat that goes around the school. It's our bioswales that we're required by law to put into place. Another picture of the site, give you a different view, and you can see the extensive bioswale again. And another picture, again here. And I think this is the last one. So a lot of work has been happening, and it's really coming along nicely. We're very pleased with the progress of Napa Junction Elementary School. So that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Approval of consent agenda. Consent agenda, background information on these items is provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion on a roll call vote unless a discussion of items is requested by the board members. And I do. Sounds good.
Are you making a motion on the other items, or?
I'll move everything except 13A.
Second.
A first by Mr. Gracia and a second by Ms. Alba Gonzalez Mares. All those in favor?
Aye.
Except for.
Oh, sorry.
Roll call. Trustee Water? Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz? Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Shunk?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
Aye.
Student Trustee Madrigal?
Aye.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Wojcik. I've been a teacher since 1986. I've been teaching from Napa Valley Unified since 1991. In my capacity here, my husband and I moved here in 91. We've had our 3 kids, and they've all gone through Napa Valley Unified School District. I've taught at elementary level. I've got my master's in U.S. history, and I teach at Vintage High School currently. Over the decades, almost 30 years of doing this, I've been on council, and I've been part of the calendar committees. I took a look at the calendar that was submitted the day of finals, when finals started on 2020, and it is expected to be just approved by the board without any comment, and I'm very concerned about this. And so I'm here today to ask you not to approve this calendar today, because they're asking for a major shift. And when I was on the calendar committee, whenever we asked for a major shift, we're asking for people to go 3 weeks into June. We've always we had, back in my day, we had 3 calendars that went out, right? The traditional calendar, the one we're always used to, the calendar with one proposed change, and a calendar with another proposed change. And the pluses and minuses were out to everybody, and they went out to all the unions, and the teachers talked about it, and the parent clubs talked about it, and the pluses and minuses were listed. There's no such thing as a perfect calendar. It doesn't exist, right? We knew that, they knew that. And then everyone said, give me your first and second choice. With 3 calendars, you're guaranteed to either get your first or second choice. So I'm asking you to do that and come back and get that feedback from the parents, from the teachers, from all the different people, and get the information back to you on that. Because the calendar that's being suggested here, I have a couple of major concerns with. First off, because it goes 3 weeks into June, then teaching at the high school level, our current calendar ends June 5th. This calendar will have it end June 16th. We haven't had students in school June 12th. So parents are just going to make the assumption that I can go, right? And we don't have a system at the high school where you can come back in the fall and take that final, because Aries closed down, right? And so I can't go back into Aries and add a final, even if we had a Super Saturday for that, right? And have it recalculate their score and give me a grade for them, right? And all those students are no longer sophomores or juniors or freshmen. They're now the next grade level up. So I have no way of fixing that situation. The paperwork that was sent out from HR that said, well, we can't get rid of the 3-week Christmas break because we haven't talked about it with the community. We haven't talked about it with the community going 3 weeks into June either. And so the seniors we're going to have because they want to walk the stage. My other problem with this particular calendar has to do with the way we're breaking it down. Now, our current calendar has 85 days for the spring semester and 95 days for 85 days for the fall semester and 95 days for the spring. And that was, it's a No Child Left Behind throwback. Right? We had 10 days in the spring that we were supposed to have No Child Left Behind testing days. So we'd end up with 85 both semesters of actual instructional time. The proposed calendar that you're giving me is 80 days for the fall semester and 100 days for the spring. If you look at May, all of the school days are 19. So you're doing 20 more extra days in the spring semester. I teach Gov. I teach Econ. Those are semester classes. Now, as a Gov teacher, we love rhetoric. Rhetoric's great. Do more with less, all right? I'm going to make the argument I already am, right? I have a textbook that was copyrighted in 2009. My kids were in first grade when this textbook came out, and all the information that's current, well, they were in kindergarten. That's the most. Now, as an econ teacher, I can tell you, yeah, you don't do more with less, you do less with less. That's how that happens. So I'm losing an entire month worth of instruction in that fall semester in a class that they have to graduate. If you can't pass Gov or Econ, you don't graduate, right? And you can't teach the same amount of time if one semester is or the same concepts. If one semester is 20 days longer. So I'm asking you to not approve this calendar today, but have them go. They've already made reference in the email that was sent out. There is a second calendar out there.
Your time is up.
I'm sorry.
No,
But there is a second calendar out there. We could create a third, right? We can use Google Classroom or Google Forms. We can do we can get this out. We can get it back on February. We can get this out to you because this isn't fair. This isn't equitable. And my students deserve better.
Lisa?
I will step up and say thank you. I had no idea about the high school level. What I do know is that I am a parent of elementary school children, and we go from the idea that you are told talk, read, sing at the preschool level, and there's all of the support, and then you go to elementary school and it kind of falls away. And the biggest thing that we're told is that you need to maintain consistency. And what I'm seeing about this new school calendar is that, especially when it comes to the second half of the year, should the days be needed or not needed or whatever, our kids are looking at 4-day-a-week schedules, which totally throws them off and makes it really hard. And not only does it make it hard for the kids, but for a working parent, you not only have to be faced with the idea of figuring out how you're going to maintain your job, but also maintain the consistency with their schedule, and then continue on with not taking away from your quality family time. And it just seems like there needs to be a better way. I mean, I've talked to some parents that I understand there's a lot of money involved. A lot of us are like, if you would just give us a bill. You know, the Saturday school doesn't work because I understand that it makes a compensation for you or for the district, but it doesn't work for me as a parent because that's our quality time. And now we're looking at the addition of a 4-day weeks, and trying to continue to adjust a schedule and adhere to ideas when you're supposed to be providing normalcy at an early age and encouragement and excitement. You know, you want your kids to be excited to go to school when they're in elementary school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those are all the speaker cards I have.
Do trustees have any follow-up questions for staff?
I don't have any questions. I think the calendar proposal before us is seen as a stopgap to a much broader discussion about the calendar. And my comment was going to be that whoever serves on the calendar committee for the second year out and sort of go forward, pull the tapes from the board meetings when we got the calendar that people consider our status quo normal calendar. Some of the speakers brought up how fun being on the calendar committee is and how difficult it is to weigh the various elements that go into it. I think we are having to deal with what some have called a new normal. I raised the concern a month or two ago around smoke days / power shutoff days. That's unfortunately the new normal that's hitting our cities, our communities, and our schools, and it's something we have to respond to. So I see the current proposal as a stopgap to deal with that, with a much broader discussion on what a go-forward approach to calendaring looks like. I sat out there in the audience in the mid-aughts as the current status quo was hashed through. It was a very vigorous public discussion then. I don't anticipate much has changed in that regard, but I would certainly encourage whoever gets on the calendar committee to review how we got here as they delve into where we go.
Dana, how many people, sorry, how many people are on the calendar committee, and what stakeholders are represented on that committee? And were some of the I'm sorry, I forgot your name, ma'am, but Patricia, and were some of those issues addressed and discussed?
Yeah, so primarily who was on the calendar committee was through NVEA Council. And so we had several meetings with NVEA looking at different options, and they brought up a lot of concerns, a lot of the same concerns that I've been hearing from people via email, and some that were shared tonight. And when we talked those through, we also brought this with our CSEA group and NAPS group. So, Trustee Shunk is correct. This is what we believe is the best thing we can do right now, given that we were presented with the circumstances of PSPS days and needing to include those in a calendar that we weren't intending to change drastically, but we had to respond to where we were going to put those days. And it does deserve a broad discussion with lots of stakeholders and more parents and more community members to really dig in if we're going to make substantial change. And we're hoping that will be able to produce a calendar for maybe several years, so we're not revisiting this every single year. Right now, so the calendar committee that we are forming now for that work, I've already received 44 people who have expressed interest in that committee. And so we're expecting to have a lot of broad input for the committee, and we will definitely elicit, in different ways, and it's good to hear how it's been done in the past, but we will definitely be figuring out ways for people who can't participate personally in the committee to also provide their input going forward.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
And that's included in the rationale and explanation of the agenda item, that this, like Trustee Shunk said, this was just to deal with those days, and that a committee of mixed stakeholders, including teachers, staff, and parents, the comprehensive approach will be taken at the beginning of the next school year. And as you can see, Dana's already preparing and planning for that as the Assistant Superintendent of HR, because this is a negotiable item with our Teachers Association for 21-22 and beyond.
Well, I remember teaching English at Napa High School when the first semester actually carried over into the next year, and people didn't like it. It was very unwieldy. And so we made a change. I also remember when we only used to get, we certainly didn't get a full week off at Thanksgiving. That came around because of furlough. We lost some work days, and of course, I was union rep at the time, and my feeling was this is serious business. This should hurt, and make people think it's serious, and not just everybody looking forward to having a whole week off. This is really serious business, and of course I was outvoted because, after things got a little bit better and we didn't have a furlough, this week stayed. It remained, and it remains quite popular. What is less popular, according to some people I've spoken with, and it's a very limited pool, it's 8 people, is the 3-week Christmas break. that there were good reasons for putting it in at the time, but have circumstances changed? And as for the second semester being longer, I also taught 1 year, I think it was the year my son graduated, where we went well into June, because school started late because of all this work that was being done from one of the bonds. It was like 2002 or something like that. And yeah, it was hard keeping them in the seats, but also as a person who taught advanced placement English, I can tell you that the second semester, for all of our talk of rigor, it is, that semester is shot full of holes by the end of the year with field trips and kids scampering off to the music competitions, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that chew into it, and I'm sympathetic to Patty Wojcik, what she said, but there are so many reasons there's a variety of reasons for the second semester being longer. I think that this calendar is by no means perfect, and a lot of people are not happy with it, but at the same time, as Joe said, we're going to be missing school because of smoke and fire days.
It's a segue to harder work that will be done, and then.
Yeah. So, all I can say is, I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to point out that part of this has been mandated by the state of California, that we provide makeup days in order to receive funds in the event that there is some sort of emergency that happens. And if we don't provide for these makeup days, then we can't get reimbursements for missed class days for other reasons. So we're being forced to do this because the power shutoff situation has become, according to the state of California, the new normal, right? And so we must plan for these things, and that's why we had to include these possible dates in this calendar that we will potentially use as makeup days or have them off if we don't end up getting power shutoffs. So it's not something that we were looking to do. It was something that was sort of foisted upon us by the state of California. That being said, I think we do have a robust plan to be more inclusive of community feedback and talking to all our stakeholders when we bring forward the next one. And so I think that this is probably the best sort of stopgap to get us through that next process that will hopefully be more robust than what we've gone through here. I just hope that we would take into consideration some of the process points that were brought up today by the public, so that we make sure that our process is quite robust when we come to do this again next year.
Gracia, I have been collecting all the comments that I've been receiving and making note of those, and I just wanted to add one thought that obviously this is not a perfect calendar, and it's not going to meet everybody's preferences, and but I think that the sooner we can make a decision and get it out and have it finalized, it helps to mitigate some of the difficulty that people will have in adjusting to the new calendar. So that's something to consider on whether we adopt it tonight or we delay and do something different.
Yeah, and we have to recognize that this is a very active community, and people do lots of things with their kids. Like 4-H, we learned all about 4-H, with one calendar.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
A first by Mr. Shunk and a second whispered by Ms. Jankowicz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, roll call.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado? Aye. Trustee Jankowicz? Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Shunk?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
Aye.
Student Trustee Madrigal?
Aye.
President Martin, I have a request for the next segment of the agenda on J. We have staff, including principals, here for item J2A on the California Accountability Dashboard. Just because it is getting late and they have to open schools early tomorrow morning, would we be okay with having J2A go in advance if we could make that amendment in order of presentations so that they can go home?
Yes. So we are amending.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Sarah Williams, the Director of Assessment, who will lead the team who are presenting on the California Dashboard, the 2019 California Dashboard. Sarah will be joined by Drew Herron, the Coordinator of Child Welfare and Attendance, by Troy Knox, Principal of McPherson, Martha Franco, Principal of Harvest Middle School, and Tara Bianchi, Principal of Yountville, and Coordinator of Homeless and Foster Youth Services. They're all going to focus a little bit on chronic absenteeism as one of the indicators that the board has requested more information about. And so thank you, team, for sticking it out, and you may begin.
Good evening. We're going to demonstrate our best line right here so you can see we're modeling best behavior. So we're going to talk a little bit about the dashboard for 2019. This evening I have my presenter notes here, so excuse me, I'm a little disoriented by all the different places I'm presenting from right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about the content of the dashboard and the way that I've set up this presentation. We're going to have, next slide please. We're going to have some different people speak to you. So you're going to see about 5 slides from me briefly, and then there'll be a presentation of various folks around chronic absenteeism after I am done with my presentation. And at that juncture, Drew Herron and myself will take any questions that you might have. So I would just like to ask that as I go through my piece, I'll go at a reasonable pace, but if you would make note of your questions and then save them, please, until the end, and then we will address them together. He'll answer the programmatic questions, and I will answer the technical ones. Thank you. So next slide, please. So the way I've arranged this particular presentation is I've done a background color on the slide which demonstrates Napa Valley Unified's dashboard color for that particular indicator. And then you will see in the smaller squares the subgroup breakout by their placement on the color gauge: red, orange, yellow, green, or blue. And then you'll see the small diagram of the color gauge in the upper right-hand corner. That is in comparison to the state. So the dial in the right, small shrunken picture, that's the state of California's current dashboard placement compared to ours, which is represented by the larger slide itself. So what you're looking at right now is graduation rate. Graduation rate refers to the numbers of students who graduate at the end of 4 or 5 years with a diploma. A snapshot of all entering 9th graders is taken in CalPads when they begin at their freshman year, and 4 years later those student IDs are compared 1-to-1 to the graduating seniors, and that is how this cohort is established. Results are then calculated comparing current to prior cohort graduates. For 2019, NVUSD graduates increased from 87.8% to 88.7%, roughly 4 more students, moving us from orange to green on the dashboard. The cut point for increasing on the dashboard is an increase of 1 to 5%. Because we increased by 1%, we were able to move 2 levels on this indicator. Thank you. The College and Career Indicator is a measure of preparedness based on demonstrated mastery and academic and work-ready indicators. To be prepared, or nearly prepared, as it is called, students must first be receiving a diploma. The participant pool determined by graduation rate. So you know who is prepared or nearly prepared by your grad weight. And what follows are the work-ready and academic indicators that would then make that graduate also prepared. Students meet these criteria in a number of ways. Examples include A through G completion, which is a preparedness measure, a score of standard met in 11th grade CASP assessments, completion of a career tech ed pathway with a C- or better in a capstone course, 2 semesters of dual enrollment in college coursework with a C- or better, attainment of the seal of biliteracy, 2 years of leadership/military science, a score of 3 or better on an AP exam, or 4 or better on 2 international baccalaureate assessments. Obviously, not all of these indicators are things that are offered at NVUSD, but most of them are. Napa Valley Unified has yellow status on the dashboard for this indicator, moving up 1 from orange, with 1.3% more students considered prepared, 44.6 versus last year's 43.4. Only the prepared indicator counts. Nearly prepared does not. To understand this indicator, it helps to review the detailed data on the California Model 5x5 chart, which is not a part of this presentation. On this model, a review of the data show that 3 of our high schools are actually in green for the college and career indicator. 1 is yellow and 1 is orange, 1 is red. To review which prepared indicator schools qualify for, a download of the data table located at the California Department of Ed website is required. In other words, a bit of digging has to occur in order for you to understand why college and career readiness is calculated the way that it is compared to graduation rate, which is a simple calculation of those students who receive a diploma. Our school students qualified for college and career readiness prepared in essentially 2 ways through this data pool. First, by A through G completion, and the most common way, by the way, and by passing both ELA and Math CASP exams in the 11th grade. Qualifying for the seal of biliteracy is the 3rd most common way in which students in Napa Valley Unified are achieving prepared status on the college and career readiness indicator. The issue around dual enrollment, there is an issue around dual enrollment, and it has been a long-standing issue that has been worked on this year, but primarily the issue is these. CalPads, which is the general platform for allocating student identity and also for transmitting transcripts through the state of California, requires cross-coding of every course a student is taking in a college environment. CalPads has its built-in codes, but then it is required that the school also go through what students are taking and then match those courses to the codes that are embedded in CalPads. That backdoor work has to be done so that when courses are inputted on transcripts in Aries, CalPads is receiving that and the students are getting credit for that for the accountability metrics. That weaving of codes wasn't done until this year. So Napa Valley Unified, while they have had dual enrolled students for quite some time, the schools where those students were attending were not receiving full credit in CalPads for the fact that those students were dual enrolled. Forgive me, that's as best as I can explain it. So as I said, the work for aligning those criteria was completed just recently. That was the work that was under David D'Amico at the time. So the 2021 dashboard should be far more representative of the reality of our students' participation in dual enrollment, 2020 and 2021. Okay. That said, one might note that the state is also yellow for this indicator, with 44.1% students meeting the prepared status for college and career. Also of important note, only one student meeting the criteria for prepared. Only students meeting prepared are counted towards this indicator. Nearly prepared does not, as we mentioned. On to our next indicator, suspension. Suspension rates are calculated by per pupil suspension. Each student is counted once, even if he or she has been suspended multiple times. This indicator is called a reverse indicator. Insofar as district performance for suspension declines when suspensions go up, which is the opposite of the performance indicators. NVUSD has moved to yellow on the dashboard from green last year, having decreased suspensions by only 0.1%, as opposed to having decreased them by 0.3% in 2018. Obviously, on the 5x5 model, the cut points are very sensitive for this indicator. Small variance makes a big difference. Taking a look at English language arts, academic performance is measured as a distance from 3. We've spoken about this before. Or a distance from standard met on CASP in grades 3 through 8 and 11. This measure is counted in points, not percentages, and that is points toward the minimum score for standard met, which is an increase, as opposed to points away from standard met, which is considered a decline. NVUSD moved from orange to yellow on the dashboard for English language arts, increasing 3.8 points toward standard met, compared to 1.7 points in 2018. You might notice the state made less growth overall, 3.1 points, compared to NVUSD's 3.8. However, the state overall is only 3 points below standard, or a distance of only 3 points, while NVUSD is 11.2 points below standard, giving us the different mark. Looking at mathematics, NVUSD has increased points toward standard met by 2.9. Students are now 48 points below standard compared to 50.9 points in 2018. This growth did not change our dashboard placement. We remain in orange on the dashboard for math. The minimum cut point for yellow is 25 points or fewer below standard. Looking at English learner progress, we are in year 2 of data collection for the English learner progress indicator. It will take a total of 3 years of data in order to establish a color on the dashboard. Year 1, or 2018, was baseline. This last year, 2019, we have enough data to determine status, which is 1 year compared to the next. Right now we are at medium. Between 45 and 55% of all English learners taking the summative LPAC exam made growth from the prior year. In 2020, next year's dashboard, we will then be able to see change over time and compare this year's performance in status to students' performance next year. Once that's established, we will have both X and Y axes on the color chart, and therefore we will have a color for the dashboard. Now we're going to look at chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is a measure of absences excused or unexcused, representing 10% or more of the school year in grades kinder through grade 8. Like suspension rate, this indicator is a reverse indicator, where district performance goes down when absences go up. NVUSD remains in orange on the dashboard, having 1.3% more students chronically absent in 2019 than in 2018. And just like our other reverse indicator suspension, the cut points are sensitive. So at this time, I will present my colleagues, and they will speak to you a little bit around chronic absenteeism and how we're managing that here in the organization.
Well, thank you, board members, for inviting us here tonight. I'm Drew Herron, the coordinator for child welfare and attendance. And Sarah talked a little bit about how the chronic absenteeism calculated. I just wanted to kind of make a couple of mentions about the coloring system. Our goal is to try to be in that green and blue area, but it's not always a good indicator about the success of the school. And a good example here in our own district is Canyon Oaks Elementary. They have a 6% chronic absenteeism rate, which is below 10%, which is great. But they are orange school, and that's because they increased by 2%. So where they are actually one of our highest performing as far as chronic absenteeism rate goes, because they increased 2%, their color is orange, where I think a lot of people think, oh, they should be green or blue for that matter. Just so I always just kind of, when I talk to principals or other people around this subject, is, you know, the color is important, but it's a little bit of a cautionary tale. It's important to really look also what their rate is on top of that to see how well schools are doing. Also, it only looks at grades K through 8, and I do get a question once in a while about, well, what about 9 through 12? And the state of California has basically said that we feel that the chronic absenteeism rate is going to be reflected in the graduation rate. So currently, that is how they are looking at it. There is talks about changing that at some point. There are some advocate groups that are looking at trying to change that, but right now that is where that is reflected. Another question that has come about is around attendance rate versus chronic absenteeism rate. So attendance rate is the percentage of students that are coming to school today, and currently we're roughly around like 95+%. But our chronic absenteeism rate for our district this last year was 11.1. So, or I'm sorry, 11.5. So the reason why there's a difference there is they both look at whether the student's absence was excused or unexcused, but Super Saturdays or Saturday school allows us to make up those missed days through our attendance rate. It only helps our attendance rate. It does not have any effect on our chronic absenteeism rate. However, there is one thing that we do offer in our school district that can help our chronic absenteeism rate, and that is through short-term independent study. We are seeing more schools starting to utilize this as a resource. These are typically for students who have a planned absence that's going to be 5 consecutive days or more. Sometimes there's some family emergencies around that, and we help those families get that arranged. And essentially those students are doing work while they are absent. So we are able to still collect ADA on them when they return, turn in their work, and then we make a determination about how much work they've done to match the days that they were absent. So we are seeing more schools starting to utilize that. We have our attendance posse here with us tonight. And I have Martha Franco from Harvest Middle School, who has done some significant things. Currently, year to date, they have decreased, which is a good thing, their chronic absenteeism rate by 3.8%. And Troy Knox from McPherson has decreased his attendance rate, chronic absenteeism rate, by 3.4% year to date. So they're doing some really good things. I'm going to turn the mic over to them so they could talk a little bit about some of the things that they're doing.
Okay, thank you, Drew. And again, my name is Troy Knox, principal at McPherson Elementary School. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you this evening about some of the success that we're experiencing at McPherson. When I met with our school community at the beginning of the school year, I shared with them that our chronic absenteeism rate from last school year was at 15%. unacceptable. And so I was I've been so proud of our families through the support of our Family Resource Center. Fabiola, our director, and her staff have been really supportive in communicating with our families about the importance of daily school attendance. And as Mr. Herron has said, we track our attendance by the day, by the week, by the month. I get monthly updates from him about how we're doing. I, in turn, share that information with our families, with our teachers. We are seeing great progress, great attendance with our Saturday school program. We have about 20 active independent short-term study contracts in place. So that is a tribute to our teachers, because they are the ones that have to create the work from anywhere from 5 to 20 days while students are, for the most part, on vacation. And so because of all of those contributing factors, we're seeing great improvement, and just really proud of the turn that we're making. So thank you. Martha?
Thank you, and good evening, and Happy New Year. Thank you for having me here today. Of course, I'm Martha Franco, and I'm from Harvest Middle School as principal. And at Harvest Middle School, to reduce the chronic absenteeism, a few things are going on at Harvest. We are closely monitoring attendance through the MTSS team every 2 weeks, and administration is meeting with the academic specialist weekly. We're reviewing data in the data zone, the chronic absenteeism list provided by CWA, and we're pulling data from ARIES. We are identifying students, discussing interventions, and we are making personal connections with these students. With the support of the parent liaison and academic specialists, teachers are more in tune and aware of student absences and the impact it has on student learning. They are reaching out to parents and connecting with our parent liaison for additional support. Our parent liaison is doing a wonderful job reaching out to families regarding the absences and connecting with families, and also connecting them with community resources when needed. She also has ongoing communication with our administrative specialist that's in charge of attendance and updating and providing her accurate information for the absences for documentation in ARIES. Our teachers are also working really hard in doing documentation in ARIES for attendance every day. And we have teachers, fortunately, that are willing and able to do the Saturday attendance. And so we are getting good attendance with Super Saturdays. And then we are also working very hard on getting students those independent study packets when they are informing us that they're leaving us and going on vacation. And so we are hopeful that we will continue to see the chronic absenteeism at Harvest continue to improve, and because students are attending school and in seats receiving instruction, that we will also see an increase in student achievement and at our site level and also at the state level with CASP. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us your time. Excuse me. I'm Tara Bianchi. I'm the principal at Yountville, and I'm also the homeless and foster liaison. And I'm here to talk to you with my homeless foster hat on because as you can see, excuse me, the homeless and the foster are in the red. And so they do struggle with their attendance. And I want to talk about some of the challenges just overall, kind of like from the perspective of homeless and foster. I've been working with them for 8 years now. The challenges, and then some of the things our district's doing to try to support the kids. So thinking of foster, we have a little bit over 100 foster students in our district right now. And who, by definition, they've gone through trauma or they're living through trauma right now. And as we know, that students that live with trauma, they suffer higher rates of all kinds of things: anxiety, depression, hyperactivity, fatigue, just all kinds of health issues. And all of these conditions contribute to challenges for these students physically and psychologically. And kids that are going through that are going to have challenges in attending school on a regular basis as well. Thinking of homeless students, we currently have 245 homeless students. We will end the year with probably 300. When I started writing this right before winter break, it was like 210 homeless students, so that's how many I've tagged since just then, and I updated it. So we'll end about 300. These homeless families are living in constant stress and instability and just worries about money and food, as you can imagine. So school attendance is a challenge for this population. So overall, we are committed in this district to improve our services for these kids. I've seen improvements in the 8 years I've been doing this, and I know there were improvements before, I would assume. For 99% of our students that are homeless or foster, we've got our system in place to have immediate, that means like that day or the next morning, immediate enrollment, same day free lunch. If transportation is an issue, we work with our wonderful transportation office that's being super cooperative and problem solve and figure that out. We also have parent liaisons and the school social workers at the schools that are working with the students and their families to connect them with community services, including like COPE, Aldea, Health and Human Services, Child Welfare Services, which you might think of as CPS, food pantries, just to name a few. There's a lot. We also provide, as a district, we also provide tutoring when it's appropriate. We also make sure that those kids are getting in-school intervention when needed and that they're enrolled in that. And if we need outside tutoring, we arrange for that. And then also, lastly but not least, we work directly with those families to help increase their attendance and to help problem solve and see how we can support them.
All right, and lastly, just to kind of address how we are supporting our schools as we move through the school year. My office once a month is sending out monthly lists to each school site of all their students who are currently chronically absent. And that is updated monthly. The goal is these students will eventually kind of slide off these lists, but these lists are used by their MTSS teams at their school sites, social workers, administrators, counselors to address whatever needs and interventions that those students may need. We also send out a report each month that shows the chronic absentee rate for each school. And we use the same color coding system as the dashboard so they can track their progress and see how they're doing as they're moving through the school year. We also received a 3-year grant, the Learning Communities for School Success Program, or LCSSP. It's a 3-year grant. There's 3 goals in there, and one of it is to focus on improving our chronic absenteeism rate. Our goal is to try to reduce it by 2%. And with that money, we are paying for social workers to work at some of our sites that have the highest rates, especially at the elementary school level, and also at our high schools. The last thing that we're also looking at is trying to possibly contract consulting services with Attendance Works. They're a nonprofit. They're considered one of the leaders in the state of California around attendance and how to help look at systems and improve our systems, improve our communication, and support families. Okay? So that is it for me.
Maybe not. So we are prepared to take your questions if you have them. Ms. Jankowicz?
I'd say the majority of them, it's not vacation, although that is a contributing factor. Well, and it is a contributing factor, but there are a lot of students that are missing a lot of days because they're saying they're ill, or there's truancy, or there's just the other families will take off like 1 or 2 days. So they can't use that short-term independent study piece because it has to be at least 5 days, consecutive days.
And on a year-over-year, are we seeing it with the same students and families? Is there a consistency with those students that are missing?
Yeah.
So we have a targeted market to address theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate the distinctions because I had trouble reconciling an attendance rate of the mid-90s with chronic absenteeism rates that ranged, when I looked at all of our schools across the spectrum, from mid-single digits to north of 20%. And I was going, what? It just didn't make sense to me. And for me, that type of indicator, at least the way it sounds, is a twofer. It helps our dear friend over in the business office, but it also helps academic progress if the kids are in school. So it seemed like a really critical item to focus on. I appreciate the numbers for context around foster and homeless, because we haven't talked about them a lot, and you know, I didn't really have a good handle on how many kids that impacted. So I vaguely remember reading something about attendance works, but it's been a while. I appreciate that we're giving people the data and people are pursuing it, again, for both those reasons, fiscal and being in class and learning. Sometimes I'm surprised, and it may get to the way the dashboard is constructed, about which schools end up in orange, when, you know, my impression of the community and the school is different, but it probably has something to do with where they're at and or plus or minus growth ending up with a different color. You spoke on one of the slides about English language progress indicator. We don't have enough data, but you're all smart people. Where do you think we'll end up a year from now?
So to answer that question, you'd really have to look at the 5x5 chart, because it's all about your cut points. We presently have between 45 and 55% students who are making progress on an annual basis, and that puts us in medium performance. If you think about that y-axis, it goes from very low, low, medium, high, and very high. And that's status. And then from change, it's significantly declined, maintained, increase, and significantly increase. And what color you end up with, medium is yellow, but if it's growth over time by increasing significantly, you can move across and up on the dashboard, so that we have, generally speaking, 50% of our population that's making growth. The other 50% is not yet. If we can move those indicators, I think that we could very easily be in, at least for sure, yellow and maybe green.
Okay, and you know, it's more to get a feel for where we're at. That makes sense.
And just kind of segue from your last comment, Joe. Yeah, I'd be curious to see from this English language learners, the crossover between that and the kids who have the chronic absenteeism, right? So the two are, you know, we're talking about a complex issue, how connected. I don't think we can look at that data, but my guess would be that there's the correlation.
We have the data. We do. It's in our present data platform called Data Zone. You can pull it, and chronic absenteeism and academic performance are united.
As they're listed in your, and as they're listed in this presentation, they fall into that orange category as you look through it. You know, it's good to hear from our principals what's working. That's helpful for us to know, in terms, for me, to know what areas to continue to support, because our families do need the support. I do appreciate also mentioning the collaborations with the nonprofit sector, especially having, for example, On the Move at various elementary schools, providing that support. I did want to ask about the number of homeless students. What determines a homeless student? You know, I don't know if there's a category there. What are the criteria for that? Because I know it's also, that's complex. And curious, in what ways are we partnering with the county, for example, Health and Human Services, in terms of, because they have a whole homeless project and funding that addresses that. So I'm wondering how that works with that. And of course, the county also manages a lot of our foster youth or cases. So I'm just wondering where our partnership comes with an entity as such as the county, in terms of looking at solutions, or if you could just elaborate a little bit more.
Okay.
And then how that number came up, because I'm just curious, knowing that in some of my meetings, it was in some of the presentations, my understanding there's 300 homeless people. So to see the number of students then.
And when you say your presentations, are you talking about county?
Just county presentations, yeah.
So the criteria, according to the education system versus the county system, are two different criteria for homelessness. The way we gather the homeless data and the foster data is we have a residency form that every family, every student is filled out for every student, and they either check that they're permanently housed or they have other categories temporarily doubled up. Unsheltered, which are usually kids that are living in their car, that right now we have, I think, 15 unsheltered. Living in a shelter like News or the Rainbow House, which is Catholic Charities, or working with a boat. And we currently have about, I think we're at 38 kids living in shelters right now. And the other is living in a hotel or a motel. And we have, I think it's 20 something, I can't remember, in hotels and motels. And again, these numbers shift all the time. I'm in there changing, tagging all the time. Or they can choose foster. And I also have a system called Foster Focus where I cross-reference and see, because lots of people don't report that they have foster kids. So that's how people are qualifying. So that's why the number's much higher, is because that temporarily doubled up, which means that they lost their home due to some kind of financial hardship, but they're staying with maybe a relative like that, or a friend. So that's why the number's so much higher. And then you asked about partnering with the county, and were you talking about Napa County or Napa County Office of Education? Napa County. Okay. Napa County, I work with CPS primarily in the Napa County, or CWS is what they call, and I run monthly collaboration meetings with them where we bring different, like probation together, and we, and as far as collaborating with them, another partner in collaborating with them is Napa County Office of Education, because they have a director of homeless and foster, a coordinator. So I work closely with her, and we work with CPS to coordinate our services, to design trainings for foster parents, because they're our link to the foster parents. And was there another question?
I have a follow-up question to
Okay.
the registration form. So on this residency form?
Yes.
Okay. So on the residency form, is that where how do you find out the social economically disadvantaged? Like, how do you make that jump? Like, let's just say, for example, if they had that hardship with fires or something happened.
So two different things. If there's a hardship with fires or something like that, that automatically will qualify, not hardship, but if they lost their home because of fires. Because actually, 2 years ago, we had almost 400 homeless students because of the fires, whatever year it was with the fires, 3 years ago, I don't remember. But it was like 398, and we're usually right around 310 or somewhere in there. But the way that we identify socioeconomic disadvantage is a completely different system. That's the free and reduced lunch, that's that form. But all children that are homeless and foster automatically qualify for free lunch, so they automatically get in that. And the residency form isn't the only way that we qualify students as homeless. Sarah does a lot of work with migrant ed, and we have a lot of crossover because a lot of those people are technically homeless, and self-reporting registrars. So, okay.
To your point, Ms. Martinez, the socioeconomically disadvantaged indicator on our dashboard is primarily influenced by free and reduced price lunch operations. That's how that is identified and is separate and apart from homeless identification.
One last thing. I just wanted to clarify that with her before she sat down. On the CalPads, how we were not fully accrediting on the matrix. What does that mean?
Yeah.
For our, like, what implications?
So here's essentially what it means. We have a data processing team that manages our student information system called ARIES. And ARIES is where grades are entered into transcripts. And ARIES also has an upload to CalPads, and CalPads feeds ARIES as well. I'm saying this wrong, so jump in, tech guys, if I'm way over the line here. But essentially, it's a two-way communication system. So CalPads is state of California, and it informs a lot of the platforms that we use in schools, including CASP registration, for example. The enrollment for the assessments at the state level, that comes directly from CalPads. All of the students' information lives in CalPads, and therefore CalPads is the underlying network that informs the dashboard. So in order for dual enrollment to count, CalPads has codes that have been shared with district data processing teams. But there had to be an intermediary, someone in instruction who sat with high school administrators, counselors, people in the know at high schools who are tracking where they're sending kids to college for coursework. And then there would have to have been a list established of all of the courses that we assign kids to in college, whether it's the Napa Valley College or an online resource. We had to establish a comprehensive list at all the high schools of all the courses that the students were taking, and then align those courses one by one to what is qualifying in a code at CalPads, whether it's a language arts course, a world language course, an elective course, a health course, et cetera, et cetera. The numbers identified in CalPads have to be aligned with the course that the child is taking here in the district, because what is entered on the transcript then informs CalPads. If that alignment doesn't occur, it may be entered in the transcript, but CalPads doesn't know what it is. It's not coded correctly. Did that help? Oh. Well, now that, right. So, so that piece has now been completed. So now when we enter dual enrollment on transcripts, it goes into CalPads as a connected code. So now that student identifier lists with that student all of the courses that they have been enrolled in that count for college.
Follow up, so that we don't have any more, or we have a process to determine any unconnected dots, because you were essentially describing a process of unconnected dots. We've now connected all the dots we knew about, but each year there could be additional new dots that need connecting. Do we have a process in place to connect new dots?
That's a good question, and I can answer it partially, and then the rest of it I cannot. There are only certain courses that will count as dual enrollment. A child can't just go and take, anything, right? So in order for us to have a process in place that allows students to get credit for all of the courses that they're taking, we would have to have a couple of things. The first we would have to have is unified agreement across all high schools about the courses that they're enrolling children in. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be in the same courses. It does mean that we would have a comprehensive list that was inclusive of what all high schools are actually enrolling kids in. And that then there would be work from that list with the data processing team to assure that anytime a new course was added or something different was added, that it was included in the CalPADS coding matrix. So that
I'm like on 6,000. I mean, you're like scrolling through. It's so. Do those? It's huge. So do those? Can Aries speak? Can they speak to each other? Can the two programs?
So you're identifying right now where the issue was for us in the past. It takes a human being to say, these are the courses we are assigning students, and these are the codes that they align with. And CalPADS has a huge repository of options because lots of districts have lots of ways of approaching dual enrollment. So that's not to confuse you, it's to give you all the options that you need that would allow students to receive credit towards your accountability. The other reality is, of course, it's exhaustive, and it requires a little bit of detailed work on the part of your data processing team. And that requires a human being that runs between data processing and the instructional side at high schools to coordinate that work.
May I add something, please? Trustee Jankowicz, what you're looking at in the matrix sounds to me like the complete comprehensive list of courses that we've offered or have ever offered. So the list of courses that we have aligned for Napa Valley College and our course list looks like about 25 courses right now that our students are currently typically taking.
Okay.
So you know.
Of course, catalogs, for the most part, there's overlap amongst the three high schools.
The course codes are the same across high schools, and what we had to do is just make a marker to the college course number, and that's done.
A little more simplistic.
Yeah.
I think I'll save my questions for when we get to a discussion on CTE. I'm sort of fascinated by the college and career readiness indicator and how it's structured. Not your issue, it's sort of a state board of ed issue. It leans rather heavily on college, and the career piece is pathway completion, which isn't the way our parents and our students frequently look at it. So I think that's a more interesting topic for another night.
I have a couple of questions. In explaining the graduation rate, you said that we compare the students that enter in as freshmen with the same student number when 4 years later, basically. Who is getting the benefit or penalty for students that leave the district? So if they say started in another district but then came here, or if they started here and then went somewhere else, how did those students get counted in the dashboard for graduation?
Okay. So in order for a student to count at your high school toward your graduation rate, they have to have been enrolled with you contiguously for a minimum of 90 days. So that means when there's movement, because the student is already identified in CalPADS, they have a student number, an SSID as it's called, state student identifier. That number travels with the child. So if I'm attending a high school in Napa and I move to someplace else and I enroll in that school, that my state identifier doesn't change. It goes now to the school I am enrolled in. And if I am enrolled in that school for 90 days or more, my diploma counts toward their graduation rate. If I am enrolled in that school for the last 2 weeks of my senior year, my diploma goes to my previous high school's graduation rate. Right? So the other reason for the 1-to-1 comparison is not just for graduation rate, but clearly also for dropout rate. Because when students disappear, that's a dropout.
My next question was, we heard from 2 schools tonight that were making some good progress, it sounded like, in reducing their absentee rate. And those schools were getting reports much more often than once a month in their chronic absenteeism reports. So my question is, would it make sense to give all schools more frequent reports in the hopes that that might spur the rates to decline?
So the reports they get from me is once a month, unless they are running other reports on their own. So school sites can do that. They, I think Martha talked about going into Data Zone, so they have access to information there. But as far as actual reportings that are there, that are being given to them on a regular basis, it's coming out once a month. It's labor intensive, so could it be beneficial to do more than like twice a month? Sure, absolutely. But that is it's a difficult task. But we're seeing some pretty good results with once a month right now, and then maybe that's something we can look at down the road where we can train the sites to access this information on their own.
If I can just answer, just to clarify a little bit more. What Mr. Heron sends us is both our chronic absenteeism rate, along with a list of students who are listed as currently chronically absent. So I then follow up and monitor those particular students on a daily and weekly basis. And then we can have communications with the family about, okay, this is where you're at. Keep us posted on, if there's anything that's coming up. If you plan on going out of town, we know about their illness or whatever the case may be. So it is an added layer that we use at McPherson to make sure that those families are off that list.
Thank you.
Thank.
I just wanted to make one last comment. It looks like our mathematics is 49 points below standard, which is quite alarming. And so I look forward to our coming study session on that topic.
I do too, but I just moved over to look at an individual high school. It shall be nameless, except I used to work there. And what I'm looking at, I'm just having, I worked in the classroom, and this killed me, reducing students to graphs and things like that. And, those of you who are not sentimental, you just, go away and plug your ears. I'm looking at the scores here, and I'm seeing pretty mediocre English language arts, not great mathematics, but I'm looking at, over in green, great graduation rate, prepared, we're green, they're green as far as, prepared for college and career. These scores are from an assessment, and now I did teach high school kids, and I said before that they're very crafty. They know the scores don't count on their grades. And then I'm thinking of that delightful young man who came in and got, and is a student of the month. Sam, darling person, very smart, and I'm sure he's going to do well wherever he goes. And I'm thinking, boy, last year he was destroying our stats, wasn't he? He was absent from school a lot, and he's not a horrible human being, and he's found himself, and he's moving off in the right direction. And this is the way, they're kids, they're works in progress. I'd like things to be better, but I'm not going to go home and tear my hair out about it, because I kind of think that some of these scores are just have got to be conscious decisions. People say, I don't like this test. I administered these tests, and at the end of this grueling week, and you know what I'm like around technology, it was all administered on computers. I managed to maintain, but I was dying, and had this enormous, big, tough football scar in the class. And even the last day
"This sucks, Mrs. Water," like that. And I started laughing, and I couldn't get over how good they were all week while they were being tortured. So, I mean, I guess I'm being sort of incoherent, but I'm looking at the dashboard, and I'm looking at things that don't make sense. You know, their high rate of graduation in spite of these, rancid math scores.
There's ambiguity to the term.
Yes, okay, ambiguity to the term, that's right. No kidding. And, oh well, anyway, I'm looking forward to February 20th. And I know you are.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for staying.
Yeah. We have some really hardcore people here. Who is he?
Moving on. J1A, presentation of 2018-19 annual district financial and Measure H bond audit reports.
I mean, look at this. Look. Look at that. What the hell?
Good evening, President Martin, members of the board, Dr. Musetti. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on our audit tonight. So we're going to start by Sheldon will go ahead and start the presentation, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the presentation. So this will be a fairly brief presentation.
All right, sounds good. Good evening and Happy New Year. That's okay, I'll go by this. It is rather far away, huh? All right. So we're going to give you a quick summary of the audit phases and then get into the results of the audit. Try not to take up too much of your time. So the first phase of the audit is the internal controls and risk assessment. We come out in April or May, and we'll be out here for about a week, and we're looking at internal controls or testing controls. And the idea behind this is to ultimately determine what our year-end substantive plan is going to look like. So we're doing our prelim risk assessment, we're testing compliance, and we're testing controls. And we're identifying the significant areas, the significant federal programs, state programs, and other areas that we're going to need to test in phase 2. Next slide. Go ahead.
It's got some timing in there.
So phase 2 includes the substantive testing, which is the cash investments, capital assets, long-term debt, accounts payable, expenditures, revenues, wrapping up state compliance, wrapping up federal compliance, and other areas that we might find where there's significance and during our risk analysis determine testing need to be done. All 3 phases, there's a third phase, which is the reporting. All 3 phases include analytics. We do our preliminary and then our account to account analytics at phase 2, and then our final wrap up analytics at the end. Where's the computer? Oh, over there. The auditing standards. Well, with the school district and most other local governments, there's quite a few auditing standards that we have to follow. First and foremost, the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. Secondly, I did a seminar today where this very experienced person kept calling it GAUGAS, and it was driving me crazy. It's GAGAS, G-A-G-A-S, generally accepted governmental auditing standards. That's provided by the Government Accountability Office. The Education Audit Appeals Panel Audit Guide. It's technically not a standard. It's the State Controller's Office of California says, here's a special agency to keep our auditors in line. And so us auditors get to follow this nice long book that includes numerous procedures and apply those towards the school districts to make sure you're in compliance with education code. And then the Single Audit Act. So if you spend $750,000 or more in federal award money, you fall under what is now called uniform guidance. So I always like to show you what GAGAS is. We call it the yellow book in the auditing standards because it's actually used to be yellow. Now it's electronic. Pensions. All right, this is the fun stuff. This is the kind of information that you really only get to see once a year, and that's when we come present the audit report. And this particular slide shows you the most important number, which is the district's proportionate share of the net pension liability for both CalPERS and CalSTRS. And the important thing to focus on in this slide really is that second row from the top on each of those tables, the CalPERS plan and the CalSTRS plan. The second row from the top shows you the district's proportionate share of the net pension liability. And the important item of those numbers, or the important items, would be that 2015 your liability was 28.3 million. 2019 it's 64.4, quite a bit of a jump, and that's for CalPERS. For CalSTRS 2015, this is June 30, 2015, fiscal year ended, 97 million. For June 30, 2019, almost 150 million. So you can see these net pension liabilities, and you can see the increase over the last 5 years. Now, keep in mind that 2015 was the first year we were required to implement Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 68, which at the time was the new reporting requirements for pensions. And you only see these numbers in the audit report from a financial statement perspective in the government-wide statement of net position, right? You also get to see it in the required supplementary information, which is actually these exact schedules that you're seeing here. Keep pointing towards the TV instead of the computer. Bad habit of doing that. Some more pensions. So what do the liabilities actually mean? What, it's a net pension liability. It's in these government-wide consolidated statements. So what does it really mean? Well, you can see the impact in your funds based on the annual required contribution. So this slide shows you the annual required contribution for CalPERS and CalSTRS from 2015 through 2019, and it'd be helpful on my computer if I kept up, because I can't see that far anymore. And then basically what you get to see is that second row, and it's good that there's no excess or deficiency there. I like to see those numbers. You met the requirement. Don't contribute more than you have to at this point in time, because you don't know where that contribution is going to go in these pooled plans. So what the important numbers? 2015 CalPERS contribution, annual required contribution, and actual contribution made was almost 3.5 million, 3.457. 2019, 6 million, quite a bit of a jump. Direct relationship with the net pension liability, right? CalSTRS, same concept, 7.45 million 2015, 14.7 million 2019. So again, direct relationship with the net pension liability. So a lot of these, the annual required contributions and the net pension liability are both measured a year behind the audit report. The valuation dates are 2 years behind the audit report, so the factors and the assumptions change. So you end up with some weird concepts in the audit report that you don't see anywhere else, like deferred inflows and outflows, which we won't get too much into those. So the bottom line is tonight, I wanted to share this information with you so you know what the impact is on that from the net pension liability. It's a direct relationship to the annual required contributions, which impacts your budgets and your fund balance. Another item that impacts budgets and fund balance, even though you won't see the liability in your fund statements, and that's other post-employment benefits. And so this page here that we're looking at actually summarizes not only the CalPERS and CalSTRS, but also your OPEB, which is the net OPEB liability. And so the net OPEB liability, which is the most important number on this page because we've discussed the others, was $58 million as of June 30, 19. June 30, 2018, it was 55 million. Now, we didn't have to report this number in your financial statement, in your government-wide financial statement, until last year. So we don't have the 2015 number in the financial statements anywhere to go back and pull. There are estimates out there, but they weren't really audited, so I wouldn't present them. This is a government-wide presentation as well. This is your change in net position. It's basically we're taking your fund statements, your general fund, your special revenue funds, capital project funds, debt service funds, consolidating those items, adding the capital assets, adding the long-term debt, adding those funny new accounting terminologies. Well, they're not new anymore, but they're still funny. Deferred inflows, deferred outflows. And ultimately, we're adjusting those items into your income statement, right? So the statement of activities, your changes in net position, this is effectively your government-wide consolidated income statement, right? The important thing to note here would be the net position. $107 million deficit, ending net position. You can see some comparables though. $252 million revenue, total revenue, versus $237 million total revenue in the prior year. Really the most important factor that I would consider in this table would be the fact that your instructional expenses went up quite a bit. $150 million 2019 versus $136 million 2018. Well, why'd that happen? Well, the biggest reason is that the state decided to make an on-behalf contribution for your pensions, both PERS and STIRS, and they did an add-on contribution for your STIRS. That gets reported as an expense, a revenue and expense. It offsets at net zero, doesn't impact your fund balance. However, it can make your expenses look a little funny, right? And so that's what you're seeing here. So your instruction expense is up not only from just normal operational activities, but mostly because of that additional on-behalf contributions. So here's the real fun, something you get to look at all year long. So this is relatively old news. Changes in fund balance. Most important, building fund. The fund balance went down by $77.8 million. Why is that? Spending bond money, capital outlay. Make sure I didn't jump ahead. Oh, good. Again, fund information, financial trends and analysis. Most important aspect of this report, of this page, would be that you met the minimum reserve of 3%. The state requires that minimum reserve to be met. However, from my perspective as an auditor, 5% is a little low. Yeah, I'd like to see that to be around 8% or so for a district this size. But the state says 3% is enough for some reason. But I think you know better because of school closures and things of that nature, right? So, however, from the audit perspective, we look at this and we go, oh, healthy, great, move on, right? Because what we look at is the next 12 months from the date we issue the report, the opinion letter and the financials. Audit results. There's only 4 no's. I used to have 5. But that's good. They're all no's. You don't want yeses. So no exceptions in the audit opinions. That means we issue the standards I talked about before. We actually issue an opinion letter for each one of those. They're all linked up. They all tie together. But there's no modifications in those opinion letters. So that means you pass the audit. There's no material weaknesses noted. So you can actually pass the audit but still have material weaknesses. So in this case, you passed the audit and did not have material weaknesses. We did not have disagreements with management, although I think Rob wanted to kill a couple of my staff down along the line. And then no significant passed on adjustments, right? A passed on adjustment is an item where we identify materiality in the audit. And for this district, materiality is rather high because of the assets. But there's another level we identify for passed on items that just are inconsequential, and we're just not going to waste time, our time and management's time adjusting them. And so we didn't have anything that we felt was significant, but passed on, right? Let's see if it happens. Hey, stamp of approval. Approved. All right, so that is it. We have one more slide, actually.
Did the auditor just make you laugh? I just thought I'd just kind of like, that'll be my entry right here as a funny person, that an auditor just made you laugh. So. That's twice consecutively. So just, with the last slide that I want to just kind of close with, factors bearing on the district's future. You've heard this from me, and it's nice to also hear this from Mr. Siobhan here, that we have declining enrollment, as you know. So since 2014-15, our enrollment's declined by about 777 students. These declines are going to cause us to continue to have to make some tough decisions. The population of California continues to drop. And this will necessitate our continued taking a very close look at our staffing level, both at the certificate level and classified level, because we understand that that's the majority of our costs come from. And that concludes the audit. Thank you very much. And then from this, unless you have some questions, I'll jump right into the next one. Are we good? Okay, great. Hey, Mr. Pearson, do you mind queuing up the next presentation for me? And I'm going to have you just hit the enter key for me instead of using this clicker.
We're jumping into bond finance.
Yes. Yes. Perfect. Well, first off, thank you very much for inviting me to speak about one of my favorite topics. I do like to speak about bonds and finance. That's one of the areas I follow just because I'm interested in it. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak for hours on end, but I won't speak for hours on end. I promise.
10:21.
Yeah, I'll make it short, and then you can send me an email or a text on the way home, and I'll pull. Is it okay? Exactly. You have to get ready for bedtime and sleep. So, I will bore you. So the purpose of the presentation here is to provide a report on our competitive sale, the last sale of our Series C 2019 general obligation bond. So I'll provide you an update. I know I provided you some information on that before, so just a brief update on that. I'm going to overview the district's bond debt in general. I'm going to look really closely at our assessed value, our future bonding capacity, and current and projected tax rates. I'm going to outline our need for future tax revenue anticipation note, or TRAN. We will need those annually for quite some time. We do receive the majority of our revenues from tax revenues, so it's about 66% or so we will continue to need them for the near future. I'm going to provide an explanation of our capital appreciation bonds, or CABs, and discuss why they were used in our past. And I'll close with a review of the district's credit rating. Next slide, please. So for the last sale for our 2019 general obligation bond, voters approved Measure H in June 2016 for a total authorization amount of $269 million. The third and final series of Measure H sold on October 22nd as a competitive sale. We are very happy to make this as a competitive sale. There was discussion in the beginning of not being able to do a competitive sale and having to do a private placement due to our credit outlook. However, we were able to make some changes to some of the stuff we've done here, including increasing our reserves. We went on a roadshow where we presented to S&P and other credit rating agencies. We were actually able to receive a stable outlook, which impacted our taxpayers. Go ahead, next slide. And so if you look at this next slide here, you can see that the district received a total of 7 bids for our general obligation bond. The bonds were awarded to the bidder with the lowest true interest cost, again, through a competitive placement. If you haven't watched a competitive placement before, it's pretty exciting to watch. Again, bond stuff. I mean, generally what happens is you get a login, you watch, no, it's not an envelope, you actually watch it online, and you have like 5 minutes left and there's no bids, and you start to worry about it, but literally in the last couple minutes, or sometimes it's the last 90 seconds, all the bids pop in. So very exciting to watch. Morgan Stanley did win with a competitive bid of 3.2598%. K&N estimates that we saved about $1.8 million in interest costs compared to the highest bid provided by Wells Fargo. And again, part of this was due to the hard work that we did in terms of our roadshow with Dr. Massetti, Paul Desario, and speaking with S&P and talking about the hard work that the board is doing here to improve our financial outlook. Next slide, please. So what this slide shows is Measure H in terms of what the taxpayers are actually paying. So with Measure H, and again, we had the ability to issue up to $60 per $100,000 of assessed value. And so the total authorization came in at $269 million. The estimated tax rate was $39, but we are happy to say that we actually came in less than that. Right now, it's about $36 for the current year, and you can see how it goes down over time. And again, the reason for this is Napa Valley has very strong assessed value, and it also, as you pay the debt down, the payment that the taxpayer has to make also goes down over time. Next slide, please. So this next slide here, it shows the tax rates for all outstanding bonds for Prop 39 bonds. And so for Prop 39 bonds, again, the maximum amount that we can do per $100,000 of assessed value is about $60. And so you can see here that we're nowhere near the ceiling of $180. The total, again, the taxpayers are paying right now per $100,000 of assessed value is about $115. And again, you can see how it decreases over time as our assessed value continues to increase. and we pay down our debt. Next slide. And so this graph isn't really, or this data, I should say, isn't really meant for you to look at a distance, so I probably should have blown it up a little bit better. But what it shows is, it shows all of our outstanding bond debt. And so all of our outstanding bond debt currently is $500 million, or if I were to say it the bad way, $500 million in outstanding debt. I could say it the easier way, right? That's the bad way, the B word there. Next slide, please. The district has passed a total of 4 authorizations since 1996. And again, the first one in 1996 was a Prop 96 election. The rules are very different than they were for Prop 39. And again, when you can see here, you can see the maximum tax rate per. So it's not applicable for the first one in 1996. You can see as you go for in 2002, again, the maximum rate was $60. The estimated was $45. It came down at about $20. But what catches my attention a little bit is the issuance in 2006, where you look at, you can see it was estimated at about $39, but it came in at $49. And so part of the reason that, I'm still researching it, but right now, in terms of speaking with our financial advisor, we anticipate that a lot of this was due to repayment of our cabs. We did refinance some of our cabs, which with some of that money, which again, when you refinance a cab, what that does is that moves the tax liability to the current term instead of paying it back far in the future. And so what that does is that impacts your assessed value, and that brings up your tax rate for that period. Next slide, please. So what this slide shows is it shows again that Napa Valley Unified has very, very strong assessed value. So the assessed value for Napa Valley Unified for the entire district is 27.8. Now I'm going to use the good B word, billion. That's what our assessed value is in this case. So we have $278 billion in assessed value. Assessed value has grown pretty significantly in Napa Valley. If you look down towards the bottom, you can see over time, since 1991, it's averaged about 6%. There was a time period around the Great Recession where it was reduced significantly. Even that last 10-year period, it dropped to about 4%. I think right now, in terms of speaking with bond counsel, they usually use a rate going out to the future of about 4%. So they do generally sign off on a pretty conservative rate. But again, you can see for the most part, we've grown at about 6%. Yeah, exactly. Next slide, please. And so for this slide here, this is a very interesting slide where it shows assessed value by area in Napa Valley Unified. So you can see the majority of the assessed value is in the city of Napa and the unincorporated areas, followed by American Canyon at about 12%, and the town of Yountville, again, for a total of $27.8 billion. Also a particular interest, it lists the number of parcels. So I know I've had questions about parcel taxes before, and again, I can address that during another conversation, but the thing to remember are the number of parcels. So if we're going to start to have discussions about a parcel tax, it's important that we look at that. Again, if it were a district-wide parcel tax, look at that 46,695. That's what it would be based on. So with a parcel tax, you're interested in the number of parcels, where in a general obligation bond, you're interested in your assessed value. Next slide, please. And so this slide, the point of this slide a little bit is to just to show you a scenario. And so one thing that I haven't really addressed that I'm going to jump into really quickly is when you look at your assessed value of $27.8 billion, your bonding capacity is determined based on Ed Code. And so Ed Code says you have the ability to, your bonding capacity, or I should say your credit card limit, or you could say the equity in your house, there's different ways to put it, is 2.5% of that. So our total statutory bonding capacity for Napa Valley Unified School District is almost $700 million. That's our total capacity. So if you want to figure out how much we can issue, and again, this is just one of many different measures, but again, when you look at assessed value, if you subtract what we owe today, if we were to issue bonds today, where we stand today, it would be about $200 million. So now remember, that doesn't mean that that's our full capacity, because again, assessed value continues to go over time. You continue to pay down your debt every single year. And then again, when you issue bonds, you generally do not issue them all at once. And so if you look at our last general obligation bond issuance, we did it in a series of 3 bonds. Part of the reason why you do that is you're waiting for your assessed value to catch up. Next slide, please. This scenario here, again, another example of a scenario where we just, again, coming up with a random number. Okay, if we wanted to issue, for example, $300 million in bonds, what would it look like in terms of time frame? How long would it take for our assessed value to get up there? So based on a rate of about 6%, which is our historic rate, you can see that we would have $300 million in bonding capacity by 21, 22. And again, that would assume that you're issuing it all at once, which again is usually not the case. You usually don't sit on that much cash. You would break it down based on your projects. Next slide. And so for this slide, again, a different debt instrument or bond instrument. The district issues TRANs. TRANs stand for Tax Revenue Anticipation Notes. The purpose of issuing a TRAN is to smooth out your cash flow. Again, in Napa Valley Unified School District, we get the majority of our revenue through property taxes. We're around 66%. We get those in 2 large payments. In order to pay our employees, again, which is what our largest bill is, we need to use TRANs in order to borrow the money. Usually the sequence for that we follow here is if you want to go to the next slide. What we will be doing this year, which follows close to what we did last year, in the spring or in March, we'll bring a request to you at a board meeting to issue the TRANs. At that point, then we'll begin discussions with S&P, who will rate our ability to issue a TRAN. With the TRAN, we'll close the deal usually the first week of July, and then that would prep us for the next year. Next slide. For this slide right here, I talk about certificates of participation. As you know, we did issue a certificate of participation of about $2.7 million in June of 2019. This was done as a private placement in order to finance the acquisition of vehicles and equipment. It's also important to note that these are callable bonds. And so again, a callable bond, the way I like to remember it is you have the ability to call it back to yourself if you want to refinance it. So usually it's much better for the issuer to have a callable bond because again, then if you decide to refinance it, you have the ability to do that. Next slide, please. So CABs, I've had a lot of requests from board members and others in the community to talk about CABs or why would you issue a CAB? CABs are bad, what happened? And so there's a lot of history to CABs, but to some extent, CABs are really no different than a zero interest bond. It's essentially the same thing. The U.S. Treasury issues them all the time. Again, the purpose of having a CAB or a zero interest bond is you push off that payment on interest into the future. Essentially what you're doing with the CAB is you're financing your interest payment. And so CABs are non-callable. Essentially what they do is they allow school districts, again, to defer that interest payment, especially during different scenarios. Mike, next slide, please. And so in terms of what happened in Napa Valley Unified, and this is pretty similar to what happened to many school districts in 2009, 2010, coming out of the Great Recession, they didn't have the assessed value to issue bonds. They needed to issue bonds. And kind of what happened after that, so Poway Unified School District, they came to the forefront a little bit, and there was a lot of bad press about Poway Unified. I don't want to judge the deal. I don't know if it was a good deal or a bad deal, but essentially what happened is they issued about $100 million in CABs, which turned into about $1 billion with big B, bad B, right, of debt for the taxpayers due to the time frame that they had. So they had a very large time frame, pretty significant amount, and a lot of bad press around it. So in our case, what had happened is our assessed value had decreased. There were projects underway that we needed to address, specifically American Canyon High School. I think it was, I wasn't here, but we issued the CABs around the time that we decided to build the third wing for the high school. In terms of what we have outstanding, we did go through trying to refinance as much as we could. And so again, we refunded about $14 million of our CABs, so about half. We were able to refund the CABs with the longest maturity. In terms of speaking to Dale Scott, the person who helped us with that deal, As we sit right now, we don't have the ability to refinance any more of those cabs. Also, given where we're at in terms of interest rates from the time we've done it, so remember that if you look at a bond that essentially a zero interest bond, they're especially sensitive to interest rate movements in the market. All your payment essentially comes in capital appreciation. So since the time that we've issued those bonds, interest rates have come down significantly. It would be exceptionally expensive to refinance them, and that would mean that's assuming that we could find them, or even the person would want to sell them. So if interest rates were to swing in the other direction, where they went up significantly, then maybe that would be an option. But as we sit right now, that's not an option. And remember, this is nothing that's coming out of the general fund. These are payments that the taxpayers pay. And with that, final slide, just really quick. And again, I think we've spoken about this. I'm not going to get into it too much. But again, we have had our credit ratings. We had 3 meetings, one with Moody's, Fitch, and S&P Global, and they've all confirmed our positive outlook. But again, we continue to have challenges that we need to address due to our declining enrollment. And with that, I'm open to questions unless it's too late.
Before we keep going, I just want to check in with the board. It is 10:30 and
I'll move we extend the meeting to 11.
First by Mr. Shunk and a second by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All those in favor?
Aye. I would just point out one other factor to the 09-10 slide.
Sure.
Our dear friends at the state of California weren't coming up with the bond
Matching funds, yeah, the matching funds, exactly.
That period, so we were financing the state of California.
Absolutely. So a lot of school districts issued cabs at the time. Napa Valley isn't unique. I don't want to say at this point, due to the bad press, that there's a place for them, but I've definitely heard from other financial advisors that sometimes there's a need for that. Like, again, if you're in a position where you have to finish a project, like a school, like you're building a school, you do not have the assessed value to issue more general obligation bonds, and you need the money soon, there's a place for it. But what you don't want to do necessarily is be in a spot where you issue $100 million with such a large time frame where it turns into $1 billion over time, and the taxpayers have this ticking time bomb far off into the future.
Any other questions? Discussion?
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You didn't make
Yeah,
us
thank
laugh
you.
twice.
Thank you.
By the way, you didn't make us laugh twice.
Okay. Sorry. I'll do a better job next time. I guess I need to take some lessons from Sheldon. Yeah.
You said 8% as if that was the low. If you were going in a perfect world, predicated on our size, where would you like to see a cash reserve? 10%.
Yeah. The average in unified school districts right now is 16%. 16, yes. That came out at the governor.
Nationally or California?
California, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Following up on that a little bit, where would we have to hit in order to not have to have a trans? What sort of reserve might we need?
I would have to do a calculation. I don't know off the top of my head, but again, it's going to be problematic for a little bit, and because again, we get the majority of our revenues from taxes. So I would say above 10%. I'd have to look back at our history. Would you agree, Sheldon? Somewhere above 10%?
We'll never know, because think about it, David. If it's 80% of our operating budget is payroll, I mean, we'd have to have a really substantial reserve to be able to borrow against ourselves and finance that on a per annum basis.
I mean, money is fairly cheap right now, so it's not highly impactful to your budget with interest rates this low. Something like that, yeah.
What are they, about 2?
Yeah. Generally, money market funds invest in them.
I'm just curious, the Measure H, the tax rate, the estimated tax rate was $39. It's below $39, actually. But the maximum tax rate is $60 per $100,000 value. Has the school district ever passed a bond going for the maximum, going for the $60 per 100,000?
I can't really, it's kind of a theoretical question. I don't know. I would imagine there's a lot of factors, including, remember, there's assessed value is also a factor. So
So we have not.
Probably highly unlikely.
There are routinely a couple of districts in the foothills of the Sierras that go to the state board and ask to go above 60.
Really?
Yeah. But, it's the state board can waive sections of ed code, and this is one section that is theoretically waivable, but there is discussion, and it is not to be taken lightly. But we have never gone anywhere near 60.
I imagine it would be
Memory.
pretty difficult to pass if you went for the max.
Thank you, Mr. Manguala.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, action items. K1 Business and Operations. K1A 2018-19 Annual District Finance and Measure H Bond Audit Reports, Financial and Performance. Motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Gracia. Second by Mr. Shunk. All those in favor?
Aye. Student board.
Student, thank you. Ms. Alo. Okay. K1B, request for allowance of attendance because of emergency conditions. J13A waiver.
So moved.
Mr. Gracia, and seconded by Mr. Shunk.
Tying it back to our calendar discussion.
Oh, there you go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? K1C, board monthly stipend increase.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Water. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? K1D, NVUSD boardroom upgrade phase 2.
So moved.
Second.
First by Mr. Gracia, second by Ms. Water.
So, having seen another board in our county, I think we do our immense fan club and the people who do watch us on YouTube a favor by moving our technology to make sure our meetings are available to people.
Yeah, and we've had some microphone difficulty at this meeting because elements of our sound system here in the boardroom are not functioning. And so this contract will directly address all that. So as soon as we approve this, we'll get right to work around the upgrades.
And the light is not that flattering. We've got some things to work on.
Right. Okay. So I have a first by Mr. Gracia and a second by Ms. Waters. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? Aye. K1E, consulting services contract with Cecile Nunley.
So moved.
First by Mr. Gracia, second by Mr. Jose. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? Aye. Mr. Hurtado, sorry. K2 instructional services, K2A, adoption of middle school supplementary instructional material, recommendation for English. Action item.
So moved.
Second.
First by Mr. Shunk, second by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? Aye. K3 operational services, K3A facilities, maintenance and operation, major deferred maintenance, MDM 06.0619, notice of completion.
So moved.
Second.
First by Mr. Gracia, second by Mr. Shunk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student? Aye. Okay. Come to board representative reports. We'll start with City of Napa liaison representatives. Board members that attended the City of Napa. Oh.
We've covered most of this, so I will be exceptionally brief. We talked about the economic outlook. We talked about the district's 2020 vision. We talked about the correlation of our budget situation and enrollment, economic indicators, which Rob addressed actually during his presentation, inflation rates, which means a net decrease for funding, aging populations, and that for most of California, that's leading to decisions on secondary schools. We talked a little bit about revenue and expenses, and both increased between 2013 and 16. And we talked about those expenses outpacing some of the revenues, like the $10 million resulting in a decreased fund balance. We didn't make the appropriate adjustments due to declining enrollment and growth as a district. For the last 20, we had growth for the district for about 20 solid years, and the AMCAM boom kind of helped mask some of the issues. There is currently no growth and no anticipated growth. We talked about a lot of economic indicators in the slowing economy, which Rob went over. Talked about reserve levels, which Rob went over. We continue to explore a park and rec facilities partnership. A field trip is planned to San Ramon and Danville with the city and Mr. Pearson, as they have a similar model in place and they're going to do some due diligence. We talked about Measure H assessments, again, much of what we went over here this evening, but we talked about continuing to prioritize how we direct funds, and Mike talked about just roofing, paving, HVAC, and some of the things that are going to come to bear on our facilities, and approaches on how we can deal with that. We talked about housing development, Napa Pipe. The city projected that it's going to attract young professionals, retirees, and second homes, none of which generate a lot of a student population, therefore not changing the original demographics as they were stated. Low-income housing will be available. We talked a little bit about the Vintage Farm, no new updates as of this point. And then in closing, we spoke about student vaping, and that there are programs in place and continue to be developed to reduce the vaping epidemic. Access and education are critical components in addressing the issue. There's SRO training and increased focus. Parent community education is obviously important, which we are addressing in the last bullet point. I'll address that. We are currently defining program parameters. There is research being done on the retail shops, the distribution issue, and how we're analyzing stats to reduce sales to minors, and a contract with the Napa County Board of Education. All the secondary schools have had presentations, and this spring we are adding 5th grade and a 5th grade parent education meeting. And done.
Thank
That's
you.
extremely thorough. Congratulations.
Did you breathe it out?
I did not. I'm going to breathe.
You'd like me to report just a little bit. Our agenda was very very small compared to your agenda. So we had a meeting, Joe Shunk and myself, Superintendent Dr. Massetti, Rob, Manguala, did I pronounce that right? I hope so. Mr. Mike Pearson, and a few city council and city manager were having our 2x2 meeting. Some of the updates that we talked about were NVUSD enrollment projections, financial conditions, and budget update. We also went through and heard American Canyon General Plan on Education and Lifelong Learning, where they will be incorporating Napa County Office of Education, Napa Valley College, and also NVUSD. And that is to talk about early education, public ed, private after-school library, seniors, and adult education. And there was some reference made to a similar program that is happening with the city of Hayward. And we have our thoughts on that, but we'll talk about those later. Reevaluation of Measure H projects and timeline on updated bond implementation plan, and then next steps with revenue possibilities for programs per parent stakeholder group request. So it was basically kind of hearing out what the community was talking to American Canyon. And so we heard them out. And then also property development updates with Watson Ranch, Broadway specific, and something that's coming way down the line is Oat Hill. Anything you'd like to?
No, I think you covered it. It was really an exchange of views and information on the research staff had done, both our staff and their staff, so.
Okay.
And trustees, just for the record, you'll note here that the town of Yountville is not on here. We've only put the liaison representative reports for where there's been meetings between the last meeting and this current meeting.
Okay.
So we're debating whether or not that'll be our ongoing continuing practice, but that is why the town of Yountville is not represented on this agenda, and we do have them scheduled for February.
Thank you. Additional suggestions, comments from board members and superintendent?
I have one. I would like to thank the superintendent for the notice she sent out to the community about our food program, and emphasizing the fact that we do not withhold food from children. We don't hold parents up for the money. We don't shame people about it. This was a story, came from a story that was printed in the Register, and went through, I don't know, got kind of twisted up, and many versions of it have gone viral. But I've had friends of mine who live on the other side of the country ask me how I can work for a school district that's so mean, and I have to explain to them that it is not the case. It's not the case at all. So thank you very much for setting the record straight.
Future agenda items?
I have one that I would like to suggest. We had the presentation today that I thought was rather pertinent as the election is coming up. And so I thought it would be important for us to develop a policy for onboarding new board members as we're rapidly approaching the 2020 election in November, and it's possible that we may have some new board members at that time, and I would like to see us develop a plan and policy for onboarding.
Would that be in lieu?
I don't think we're going to have any new board.
Just to get clear, Trustee Gracia, would that be something that could be an addition to our governance handbook? In terms of protocol and procedure, that we just adopted the governance handbook, and so
it would be something in addition to our governance handbook. I had a very interesting presentation at the CSBA conference that talked about an entire plan, including meeting with newly electeds, prior to their being sworn in, and it was rather in depth, and I think we should adopt something to smooth that process along.
Good. I'll do my research there and bring something back. And then as far as future agendas, I know it's late for everybody, but I do just want to close the loop. So occasionally I'll report out around where we are and some of the past future agenda item requests from the school board. Technology implementation plan requested by Trustee Gracia will be presented on January 30th. A return on investment with PBIS as a initiative. That will be a presentation that will be implemented. This is all tentative, of course, and subject to change. But April 23rd is part of our discipline task force presentation that is scheduled. There was a request last year around our policy around potentially the pride flag. And so the policy committee will be reviewing that as a first item for policy on February the 13th. The presentation on chronic absenteeism requested by Trustee Shunk was presented today. CTE program study session by Trustee Shunk is scheduled for March the 12th. Analysis of NCOE and NVUSD programs, so the other two programs being preschool and after school, is tentatively scheduled for March the 26th. Student achievement curriculum focus for the school board, our first sort of effort around that will be the math study session. We'll focus first on math. That is now tentatively scheduled, or we're scheduled for February the 20th. And then and that was by Trustee Gracia. Trustee Martin had a request around board member and superintendent seating during board meetings, and we will schedule that discussion tentatively at the next board meeting on January the 30th.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to close our meeting.
Second.
Goodness. Can I finish?
We're trying to help you out.
Thank you. It's late.
This is a nice.
Okay, a first by Ms. Elba Gonzalez Mares and a second by Mr. Shunk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Student? Thank you.
It's very nice. My,
We're adjourned.
somebody gave me a Mont Blanc that they got.